Here at Ask an Enemy, we do take full advantage of our freedom of speech, and from time to time we may say things that offend certain people. No one is forcing you to download and or listen to this podcast. So if you're easily offended, go back to watching your Kirk Cameron movies, you fucking pussy.
Hit it!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Ask an Enemy Interviews, episode 10 of all episodes. I am your host, JC Salinas, of course, creative director of Ask an Enemy Studios, creative protector of Howard Rourke. I'm joined again by my buddy Barry Peterson, as always. Good sidekick to have, good co-host to have. You guys know Barry. Sidekick co-host. What's a step up from sidekick, dude? What would you say?
I don't know.
Well, you know, I mean, in the best of, yeah, in the best of abilities. And then I'm also.
I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Yeah, there you go. With love, man, with love. I'm also joined by my boy Daniel Rivera. If any of you guys have been watching the episodes, you will know that he was on episode, I want to say 4. He was previously with Kilo and the Dew. Now he's with Splendid Sun, or I guess not currently. We could get into that. But he's been doing stuff with Splendid Sun and the Swell Kids. Fellas, how you doing? Doing all right? Holding up?
Surviving, man. In the
Living
times
the dream.
of Corona.
Living the dream. I think that's like the second time you've told me that, Barry. That's awesome.
It keeps getting harder to say.
I know, right? It kind of does feel like a dream in a way, man. For me personally, for sure, if it like working from home, like I've never been able to do that, even though I've been pounding it into the day job that it's possible. It took a crazy ass pandemic for them to realize, hey, you can work from home. That's crazy, man.
Wait a second. We just have you come into the office and sit in front of a computer all day?
Exactly.
You could do that at home.
Exactly. So we are going to talk about the like I always theme these things. Yeah. Can you hear us? Uh-oh. For a second. Dude, it's El Paso, so it never fails.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
It never fails.
Yeah.
Oh, are you there, Daniel? You can hear us?
I feel that. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, man.
All right, good.
El Paso, man. Hey, it wouldn't be an El Paso show without something going wrong, man. Always. Always.
Absolutely.
Right? I've got my boy Barry here, who's been doing. I guess how would you describe it, Barry? Let's go through you for a bit. Like, let's do you, bro. Like, how would you describe what you did back in the day, and like, how did you get started, essentially?
Well, it's one of those things like, you know, you could there's a bunch of different names or titles or whatever you could use for it. There's, you know, promoter, booker, talent buyer, whatever you want to call it. Basically just, I was the guy who had to call all the bands and beg them to come here and promise to pay them more money than they were ever worth.
Wait, so you actually reached out to bands to come here and play? Not,
oh yeah.
In addition, I'm sure in addition to people contacting you to play shows here, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's, you know, starting out when you're nobody and nobody knows who you are, what you do, where you work, anything like that.
Right.
You reach out, you make calls, you tell people, hey, I notice your tour routing head off between Phoenix and Dallas. I've got this club in El Paso. How would you like to stop in and, you know, maybe make $50 for the night or whatever?
Right.
And ideally, over time, you know, those bands have a good experience and they tell their friends who tell their friends who tell their booking agents and start saying, oh, by the way, next tour we need to go through El Paso because we like
it was
El
rad
Paso
or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
Like the crowd and then just the people that you worked with or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, hopefully back and say, I liked working with Barry. Barry was good to us. So let's go back and do that. So.
Right on.
Yeah. But how I got started with it, you know, I started going to shows in high school. like freshman year, first couple of shows, and then
Fucking
a lot more later, in the later couple of years. And then I left after I graduated. I went off to college for a year, and I came back, and there just weren't a lot of shows going on. There was really only one person in town that I knew of who was doing shows.
Who was that?
And that was Luis.
Nice.
Luis Mota. And basically, I was just like, hey, man, I want to see shows. How can I help? Like, what can I do, to help you to get this stuff happening? And, what can I do to get this stuff going on here in town? And so Luis and I partnered up, and we started up a company. So you see Full Flavor down here.
Right on.
Here. So that was me and Luis for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And we did a ton of stuff together. At one point, we were booking shows here in town, Las Cruces, Albuquerque, just kind of all over the place. And then Luis ended up moving to Albuquerque, so that made it easier for us to kind of like split stuff.
Oh, shit.
Like, yeah, we could get like wholesale deals on shows. Like,
right.
Hey, if you come through, we can get you 2 really good shows.
Yeah, and they're so close, right? Like you could probably very easily convince them to be like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it.
Yep.
Because either way, you're probably going to go that way.
Yeah,
towards Albuquerque.
And there were a lot of shows that would be going to Albuquerque, and then, like I said, they'd have a day off between Albuquerque and Austin, or Albuquerque and Phoenix, or something like that. And so it was just like, by the way, we can book you guys in El Paso too. You're passing through. It doesn't cost you anything to get there, and it was El Paso's tough. So yeah, El Paso's tough. So it wasn't like we can guarantee that you'll make $80,000 tonight, but you're passing through. Hey, we'll get you $50 for gas money, and we'll get you a place to sleep and get you some good tacos for the night. So
some good tacos. Did you end up taking over?
Yeah, man, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You would be surprised how many bands come through, and like after like the first or second time they're here, they'd show up and be like, "Oh, dude, can we go to this particular place for dinner? Like, this is what we want." Like, heck yeah, dude. Of course.
Right on.
So,
So real quick, let's go into Daniel's backstory real quick and see.
Hey, I'm gonna grab my dinner. Real quick.
Yeah, no, this is perfect timing then, man. Yeah, go for it.
She's here.
Barry's gonna go get his food because it's 2020, man, and you could do Uber Eats. So
Uber Eats.
Yeah. So yeah, Daniel's mentioning he's having a little bit of technical difficulties, but it seems okay so far, man. So yeah, go ahead and let's talk a bit and see if this irons out, and if not, we could always refresh you. But yeah, go for it. So really quick though, like I said before, Daniel was in this band called Kilo and the Do. That's when I first interviewed him. That's kind of when I first met you, actually, right? And then
we were working
at the same place. Yeah.
Oh. 2013 I started a band called Kilo and the Do. We were like indie dance, indie pop inspired, and from there it just came into a career because eventually I got hired on to actually work as the audio engineer of Palace. And it's funny you mentioned Luis Mota, because he actually hired me to run the audio up at Bowie Feathers when they started doing shows there. I actually worked,
no shit.
I don't know,
nice.
Somewhere between a year and 2 years.
Right.
So
nice.
Like with them, Gabe Gonzalez and everything. So Luis, I know him very well, and I love that guy to death too. But from there, it just continued to grow. As people may or may not be aware of, Lowbrow Palace has kind of grown over time, and we started moving from the small like 250 capacity shows up to like 2,000. And we also have our hands in like festivals and stuff like that throughout Texas. We work with a company. Some of us, not Splendid Sun as an organization, but some of us independently work for another company that does hip-hop festivals throughout the state. And the largest festival that I've ever worked, believe it or not, was Astroworld 2019, and it was 65,000 people, which was insane.
Oh, crap.
I'm not a huge fan of hip-hop music, but, my career just kind of took me there. Yeah. And I'm also still a musician on the side. I play in a band called Table Manners. I'm a drummer with... I don't know if anyone knows him, but Christian Miranda, he was he used to play with Little Means Kindness back in the day. And I'm working as a producer with a pop, or I guess you could say R&B and DJ duo named the Swell Kids now. So I try to keep busy, you know?
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah, because
Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead, Bear.
I was going to say, you mentioned Lowbrow. I don't know if you were aware, but when Lowbrow Palace first opened up on Robinson, when they were, under construction and everything, I got hired to do all the shows there, and I was there for, like 6 months or something and it was a nightmare. Yeah, it was a nightmare.
In what sense, Barry? Like sound stuff, or just the way that people were running it?
No, just the way that some things were run, and I don't want to sound like I'm talking shit about those guys, because
no, of course,
Austin and all those guys at the time, awesome, great guys, and I still thank them every day for that opportunity. But there were just some differences of opinions on things, and it just made it tough to be successful. They ended up, kind of going in different directions, and it's been wildly successful, and more power to them.
Yeah.
So
ever since then, right? Because exactly. Yeah. Sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
I started working under Brian Ramos before Lowbrow was sold. I'm not sure how many people know, but I don't remember how many years ago. But Lowbrow was sold from Austin to the Splendid Sun Productions, and that's kind of when I really came in to my position there as production manager, when that whole transition took place. So I've worked with Austin a lot, but no, I'm definitely very in on the Splendid Sun Productions side of it. I know Lowbrow holds a name for a lot of people, but it's kind of gone through 2 life cycles at this point, where totally. Post-corona, it'll be 3 life cycles, you know what I mean? But no.
Hey, man,
but
it is
a
survives.
difficult place, man.
Yeah.
It's a hard place to work at, because it's a difficult room to mix in from the audio engineering standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
It's a difficult room to make look good from a lighting standpoint, because it's so awkward in terms of its ceiling. And then, it's just... I'm sorry, my dogs are going crazy.
It's all good, man.
That's what they do.
And then it's just a weird room. We've had so many artists on both sides kind of walk in and refuse to play a show because of it's so
really
weird, or
absolutely.
But
where does our stuff go? And we're like,
wow.
As many bands as have said that, probably about 85% of those bands that say that end up leaving at the end of the night saying this was one of the funnest shows we've ever played, because the beauty of Lowbrow Robinson is that it's so intimate. You pack 250 people in there. It feels almost like an auditorium because of the different levels. And it's packed, but then just the vibe that you get, because you're so close to the artist, you know what I mean? It's a, it's one of those places where on paper it should never work, but it works.
Yeah, well, because the setup
I've got some funny.
Go ahead, Barry.
I was just gonna say, I've got some funny pictures of the room when it was under construction, and I remember going in there and taking pictures and just being and Austin's well, this is where we're going to put this, and this is where we're going to put that. I'm like, how the hell is this going to work, man?
Well, you know what?
It did. So.
Yeah, because, Barry, do you happen to have those where you could toss them in the drive at all? To show them, or?
I might. We'll keep talking. And I'll
okay, yeah, if you can. You can toss them in that same folder, and I should be able to bring them up. Anyway. Because so that's it's kind of I'm completely floored that you guys say that bands show up and just straight up are what the fuck is going on here, because I've wondered that myself when I first saw how it was going to be built out. Also, Mario had shown me that stuff a long time ago too, man, so for people who don't know, exactly, so Jacob actually right on cue, dude, when I looked at the chat, Jacob said Zeppelins. Because Zeppelins was that was when it was still that one floor, right? Just a big room, and even that was super intimate, because it was just one floor. There's hardly a stage. It was just maybe a 1 foot riser, maybe if that. And even that had its own variations of it. But when they ended up remodeling it, they made it this kind of 3-level thing, but it went down from that that base floor or whatever. It was so weird. And yeah,
Well,
if we could
and-
show pictures of it, that'd be crazy.
One of the weirdest parts
Yeah.
about it, coming from like a production standpoint, like taking it from like like DIY punk bands who are down to play whatever the fuck, to like larger bands that actually come in with production and stuff like
yeah.
that. Given the fact that it
Yeah.
was a corner stage,
Mhm.
made it so difficult. So not only was it a corner stage, but there was essentially 3 different levels because it was the base floor stage,
Right.
and then there was a built-in riser that was way too unnecessarily tucked into the corner and so awkward that you could barely
Well-
fit a drum kit on it.
Yeah.
And then the other
Well, do you-
section.
Do you
Go
know
ahead.
why that riser's
ahead.
there? Do you know why that riser's there?
I found out, and I don't know.
Yeah.
What is
I
it?
don't know
Is
if
it
you
is it
guys
just
know
fucked up
this.
wall that had to be covered up?
No, it's
No,
a water.
it's plumbing.
pipe.
It's plumbing.
Oh,
They just had to cover up the
PVC
plumbing.
But see,
man.
what you guys may or may not know, I don't know if you're familiar. Oh fuck, what was the name of the
Barry
band?
knows a lot of this stuff. I always just end up
Um,
hearing it from him or not.
We had a huge band that played early last year. The name escapes me, but they're like a 9-member band. So
Liquid cheese.
we've actually rebuilt. We've actually rebuilt the stage. The stage is completely rebuilt at this point.
Oh
We
wow.
extended it out so it's flat. So instead of in the corner, like when you walk in when you walk into the door, that wall that you're seeing right now, that's where the stage is aimed at, in
Right.
that direction. And we took out the riser as well. Like we made it work to where like the stage is much bigger now. So I think that happened like maybe March of
That's cool.
2019. So it works. It killed a little bit of the capacity, and it's a little tighter in the pit now, but it looks better and bands are generally happier,
Mm-hmm.
But no, I love
Yeah,
the room,
and-
like especially when you're working like a packed room with like an amazing band. Like the first time we had the Growlers was inside of Lowbrow Robinson, which was insane. You know what I mean? But it was a great show.
Yeah.
And the
Go
whole
ahead, Barry.
like concept of bands showing up and being leery of the setup, it's not unique to Lowbrow at all.
No.
There were plenty of times when JC probably remembers shows at the House of Rock and Roll when bands would
Oh,
show
yeah.
up and be like, "Are you kidding me? I'm not playing in this. This is not what we're gonna do. We're not about this life."
Well,
I still remember when we had the Aquabats there, and that was the first show we had after we expanded the room. And so when the band showed up, like there was still just like wiring hanging from the ceiling, and we're like the band is setting up and we're like tucking stuff away, like, oh shit, they're gonna see all this and not want to do anything.
Wait, Barry,
But,
are you talking about House of Rock and Roll with all that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
you
and
see,
like that show that we had, the front of the stage had this like tongue that came out.
Mm-hmm.
JC, I don't know if you remember that. It was this weird like pointed tongue,
Yeah.
and basically that night we put it in, we built it, put everything around it, and by the end of the night it had been destroyed. Like just from people running into it all night, it was gone.
Because it was just awkward as fuck to have, right?
It was just, well, yeah, because it was only like 2 feet wide. It was basically just to split the crowd. But as the crowd starts moving and kicking it and running into it, it just didn't last. It was
Yeah.
hilarious. But
Well, as I alluded to earlier, I ran stuff at Bowie Feathers for a little while. By ran, I just mean I was the audio engineer. I didn't do anything special there. But I used to do a lot of shows downstairs with Gabe at Tricky Falls.
Mhm.
And I cannot tell you how many bands came into Tricky Falls. Like, what the fuck is this place? And it's just like, come on,
Yeah.
man. This is a nice room. I mean, it's not a great room, but it was like a really solid place to play. I played there a few times.
no,
loved it there.
you're wrong, man. It is a great room. I love that room. I love it.
From a sound standpoint and from a
Whatever. I'm just a fan in
architectural
the audience.
standpoint. yeah. No, seeing shows there is
Yeah.
amazing. Like doing production there is a fucking nightmare, but seeing
Yeah.
shows there, one of my favorite things ever. I miss that
Oh, yeah.
place so much.
The last show I ever did was there, actually.
Yeah, that's
That was-
awesome.
All right, give me a sec. I was actually trying to
Did you
bring
get
it
that
up.
picture there?
Yeah, I threw it in. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to find it in these. There it is. Okay. So
You're gonna
when I
have to
get
make a small so everyone can see it.
Yeah, no. So check this
So
out.
this is a
I can zoom us in here.
Ah, gone again.
Yeah, no, you guys are good. I'm about to change this here. What's up, Kel? I see.
What's up, Kel?
Yeah.
She's not sneaking up on you.
No, man. I heard the door open a little while ago, so I knew she was home. She went to go run some errands at Costco. So, yeah, there we go. Pretty pimp, huh?
Ah, there it is.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
Oh,
okay.
look at that.
So the flyer, or it's not a flyer, it's one of the last ones here. Let's see if we can
It's just
find
a.
it. There it
Let's
is.
see. There it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
oh,
I mean,
man.
oof.
And so,
So-
this is the entrance, right? Like right here over where Daniel's head is, like that. Is
No,
that not?
This is back by the bathrooms.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
that's the
okay.
stairwell. This is off right to the left of where the console used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So now
Yep.
the console sits to the left of the pillar that we're seeing right there. On
Right,
the
right.
second floor.
Okay.
And then I think JC, you saw this recently, right?
Yeah.
Because I saw you at a show, not recently, obviously, but
It was recent enough.
months ago. And then I
In
know
my
at some
time, it was
point,
recent enough. Yeah.
right there at that rock wall. At some point, that little section of railing got taken out, and they extended the stage out for some random
Right.
artist. And then now we've just essentially just flattened the stage all the way on the front and removed the drum riser as well.
Yeah. And that kind of like wooden part there is like seating, right, for people to sit there.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's the framing of the booth. Mhm.
Yeah, and then way
God
far in the
be-
back, that's like the drum riser,
Mhm.
Yep.
and then
So
the
the band
stage
that
right in front of it.
we had to make the adjustment for was Godspeed You Black Emperor. They had, I believe, 8 members,
Oh,
and they
geez.
actually had
Ah.
a visual artist
Mhm.
that was set up on the 3rd tier, and we had to set up this giant wall for projections, and he was projecting 8mm film,
Mhm.
actual film from 3 separate projectors, and then doing custom effects. So he was burning film during the set. It was one of the
man.
wildest shows I've ever seen, man.
Yeah.
That band is so weird.
Right.
But
and
it was great, dude. The show was amazing.
No,
well,
They are
so
super weird. You are right.
yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about also like today is just the random stuff that you guys get into like that, right? So like running sound, you'll get to see a bunch of stuff like that. And you have to deal with the bands who have to deal with those types of things because like how Barry said when he was doing shows at House of Rock and Roll, I honestly don't remember how the hell I got roped into running sound at that place, but I did for quite a while. And that it's like, oh man, it's like talk about killing your mood to want to play music with people anymore, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
boy, we had
But-
we had some rough times.
Yeah, but you know, it's like, you know, as I always say, man, stay positive. So it's like as bad as those things were, they were still 100% like learning experiences, so I like have no regrets whatsoever. It's just like holy crap, man, that will like totally push you in a
all
certain
that
way.
shit's fun stories afterwards too, man.
Yeah,
It's all fun
100%.
stories,
That
yeah.
exactly.
All that
Yeah.
craziness that you deal with. I remember.
Hey, by the way,
I'm not
J-
going to mention the
JC,
name.
Yo.
Do you
Yeah,
see that this
I
still
saw
has
it exactly. Yeah, I saw it when you said that. I can change that in a split sec. There we go. Yeah,
Sorry
thanks,
about
I'm
man.
not going to name.
I noticed that too.
I'm not going to mention the name of a band, but we had
Oh,
this
I'll
one
name them
artist
all
that came in.
Yeah, go ahead, dude.
We
Sorry.
had this one band. One of the most difficult things to deal with, especially now. I'm not sure how much Barry dealt with this back in the day, but is tour bus parking is impossible at Lowbrow because there's no dedicated parking. So
Right.
we did so many things. Eventually, we just started saying "fuck you" to CVS before they closed and just throwing the buses in their parking lot because we
Right.
had no other option. But we had one artist that came. She flipped her lid because of the bus parking situation, then walked in, almost refused to play the show, and then her guitarist had to get the name of a gym from us because they were like super gym heads, and had to take her to the gym to work out to calm her down enough to play the fucking show.
Dude,
She had
that
to go
is
get a-
some
she had to go get a
elitist
pump?
ass shit. Yeah. Fucking
Yeah, it's
hippies.
some fucking. It's fucking. And it was like I don't know, you would call it new metal. It was like a metal band, and it's just like, come on, like you're a fucking
Gross.
rock artist. Just
Yeah. Well, you know what, man? It's
Awful.
better than shooting up the place or anything like that. So I guess, you know, hey, that's cool, you know?
yeah.
But
But it was wild because like we were loading in for like 2 hours, still not knowing whether or not she was going to agree to play the show.
Well, but so how would you guys deal with that? Would you charge them for parking and then just have it kind of be like a protected parking and you make a deal with CVS or something, or was it just like, hey man, it's fucking El Paso, just park wherever?
So basically,
Or
it was
I mean,
the
if you can't
Hey,
talk
it's El
about trade
Paso.
secrets, do
We
don't.
tried
But
to-
yeah,
No, well, see, this is the thing is like, I don't know anyone who appreciated that CVS coming and fucking destroying a part of our history there on that block. You know what I mean? I fucking hated that CVS.
yeah.
What made it worse is when they first opened, they allowed our public to park there. Then they bitched that there were too many, like there was too much shit that they had to clean, so that
Beer
they
bottles
started
and shit.
towing. They towed like so many of us, and they didn't inform us. They didn't whatever. It was fucked up. And then we even offered to give them like a monthly, fee to allow us to park, like employees or the buses to park there.
Mhm.
And they still said fuck you. So at one point, we just started saying fuck you back. Like, how are you gonna tow away a tour bus? You know what I mean? So we were like,
Oh, there are
fuck you, we're
ways,
just
man.
gonna put the tour bus.
They'll find ways.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but like, a tour bus, there's always people in it, so it's a different story, from a car that someone's 200 yards away from or whatever. So
Yeah.
but really, what it came down to the most is that area right in front, or like right on the corner of Oregon and Robinson. We just eventually bought cones and caution tape, and we would tape off that area. So it really sucked for me, and then also our talent buyer, whose name is Christian,
Mhm.
because we would have to figure out exactly what time the band would get there.
Mhm.
We would have to wait until all the fucking bar rats left, so 3 or 4 in the morning, drive down to Lowbrow, and then put out the cones while there was no cars there, and then hope that no one
People
moved the cones, 'cause
obeyed the cones.
legally there was nothing we could do. We contacted
Right.
the city to try to institute an additional loading zone, or even to put like parking permits there,
Right.
and we never got a budge from anyone. So
Right.
it was a very difficult situation. It always was. Like, the most stressed out shows there at Robinson are always tour bus shows, because A, where the fuck do you put the tour bus, and then B, that it's a higher quality show, or a higher caliber artist, I guess you could say, that's touring on a bus.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be a rock band or a
Well-
hip hop artist, it didn't really matter.
Right.
It just means it's a higher cost artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can afford the bus, so that they want more in return from the show, not only
Yeah.
in monetary value.
Well,
but
so how do
as
you
like
handle that?
guarantees go up, like
Yeah.
requirements and production go up too. So
So
it's kinda
do you
like
handle that
weird
in
thing.
just the ticket price, because you can only put so many people in there, right? And then
Yeah,
I would
so-
assume if they're tour bus people, they're the type of people that look at Zeppelin's. I'm sorry, not Zeppelin's. Lowbrow, and are like, "What the hell is this?" Like not that it's like, look at this trash heap, but look at this trash heap.
communication is pretty much everything, man. So like Splendid Sun Productions has been doing shows since like 2007 or something like that, so they have really personal relationships with a lot of like the major booking agencies throughout the US.
Right.
Like, they're very well connected there. And then of course it all comes down to advancing the shows. You be as detailed as possible. We would send pictures, we drew up maps like in CAD software, explain to them exactly
okay.
what
All right.
to experience, so that way when they got there, if there was a big ass problem, we'd be like, this email, either
Yep.
it's your
Yeah.
booking agent's fault for not telling you, or it's your manager's fault for not telling you. So you would just
Yep.
completely divert it off to them, because they need to know what they're coming in at. And what that also meant is, for a lot of larger artists that would bring in their own audio guy, or video or lighting guys, I would actually either directly connect with them by email, phone call. I cannot tell you how many shows I've actually had phone calls with incoming audio engineers, just to be like, this is the room, these are the frequencies, this is the shape of the room, this is what you're working with in terms of equipment. Let me know if you
fucking
need
Christ!
this
And no, then that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Because
know,
Barry, like,
It's all about the experience and the hospitality, like Barry was saying earlier. You want to make it
Yeah.
as good of a feeling and good of a situation for the artist as you do for the crowd, because it's a two-way street.
Yeah, well,
And
because
as
that's
a
what I was gonna
promoter,
say.
you
Is like
have
I'm
to
sure
facilitate that.
Yeah.
Barry's dealt with that stuff with all the different places.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, right? Is like, so what do you think is what causes a lot of these places to shut down, right? So like Club 101 is like the one place I could think of from like way back in the day that was always like the place you wanted to play, like 101 E9 and that little strip, right? Was always like the place. And I think it was just like, I think we talked about this in another episode with, I'd love to get Joe Dorgan on the show, man. That would be so fucking rad, because that dude just has so much way back in the day experience of that kind of stuff. I just don't know how much he'd be willing to talk about stuff, you know?
Well, I'll tell you this.
I see you shaking your
love
head,
Joe
and I hope
Dorgan.
that's not a bad thing. Okay.
Yeah, I love Joe Dorgan.
Right.
He was really good to us on a lot of shows. I mean, he really he went out of his way to help us be successful on a lot of shows. But for the like interview and chatting kind of stuff, he's not
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Well, and that's crazy, dude, because he used to have that show with Marina, right? Like on, what was it? Hero
but-
Radio and stuff?
But even that was just like, hi, I'm Joe Dorgan. I'm going to play you some records.
Right. But, well, because
it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this wasn't talk show format. You know?
yeah, he's got Marina for that anyway, right? Like Marina would be the one who's
Yeah.
all like super chatty and
Yeah.
super cool about that. Yeah, that's awesome.
No, but like I said, he was super awesome. But you talk with him like, I hear these bands are coming. What do you think about this band? And he'd just be like, okay.
Yeah. But he was super cool, right?
Yeah.
Like he was
Tell
good to
me
work
more,
with.
Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was. Like you said, that was Club 101 was sort of the place to play,
Right.
and he was always really good to us because we would bring in a lot of bands that weren't super big, weren't necessarily going to make a lot of money, and he would find ways to be like, okay, well, I won't charge you this, but that means you won't get this. I'm only going to hire one bartender for the night. Can you bring your own security? That kind of stuff.
Right.
So, like, he went out of his way to make sure that we were successful, and a million thanks to him because he did more for the scene here in El Paso the last 30 years than just about anybody. So,
Yeah. 100%.
Joe, if you happen to see this, thank you.
Fucking amen. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, and this is what I was going to ask. Like, I guess either one of you could jump on this, but the idea of, yeah, like what makes places shut down? Do you think it's just the management? Is it really like Manny would always talk about this, right? Devices Manny. The idea of location. Like, is location really the issue? Because if that's the case, like, and I don't mean to talk about lowbrow in a bad way, but just the idea of like how you're talking about, Daniel, like the idea of lowbrow is like this smaller place. Its location, I think, is actually pretty cool because it's in a very like populated area, but it also like just the parking is terrible, right? Like,
Yeah, so you get like a positive and a negative from the location. Like a lot of people think,
but
you're next
weigh
to
it,
college,
right? So like,
that's gonna
which one
boost-
do you
yeah,
think
yeah.
is most important? Like, what do you think it is that closes these places down?
Honestly, so I don't know what closes them down. I would say it would be poor talent buying and poor management is what it comes down to, because the management will inform the experience from the perspective of the customers, the actual patrons of the show, which it's important to try to make them, as comfortable and happy, although it's really difficult, especially in a sold out show capacity. And then the secondary portion of that is to make sure that you not only bring in artists that are, our market is interested in, but also, build relationships with the talent buyers. Because like Barry was saying earlier about, being able to book shows here in El Paso and Albuquerque and like providing like a two-stop, tour kind of contract, where you get maybe a lower price on the artist, or you have to provide less for the artist or whatever. It's the same thing when you start creating like relationships, long-term relationships with booking agencies that, JC from booking agency A can have, this huge band that we really want to book, but he's like, hey, can you do me a favor? I'll make sure that you get this big band, but can you book this other upcoming band that I have? And you're taking a risk on that upcoming band, but then you're also it's
Yeah.
a risk reward proposition. You're going to get the bigger show, and you never know, that one band might come now, and then like an hour later or a year later, excuse me, that artist could be booming, and you already built a crowd here for them. So it's all about relationships and then management.
Real quick, Barry.
I can
just
tell
because, real quick, just because there's something in the chat. So Jacob says sometimes, I think he didn't spell this right, but it might be earrings guys go out of their way to help quest for the people in the music community. They lose focus of the actual business they're running. Minus earrings. I don't know what that means. But then Mike also says in the chat, poor management for sure, which is kind of what my gut feeling was. But go ahead, Barry. What were you going to say?
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna mention. You talk about taking on these
Jake, if
smaller
you could
bands.
clarify that, just yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Barry.
Kind of, you give them a chance like that, and it just cycled through the flyers there.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten a call one day, and it was this band, and they're like, "Hey, we're coming through. We're on our way to California, and then we're going back to the East Coast. So we're looking for 2 shows." And I was like,
So we could
"Yeah,
check
that
'em out.
sucks. Like to have, oh, look, there it is, right there." And so they're like, "We're looking for 2 shows, about a month and a half apart." I'm like, "That sucks because." People are either going to come see you the first time or the second time or not at all,
Right.
And so I was like, all right, look, here's what I can do. I can do the first one, and it's going to be small, probably not going to be a big crowd, won't be a whole lot of fun as far as, the audience size or whatever, but we'll have a good time. I'll get you guys some gas money. There's the second one. And I was like, and then, on your way back, I've got this other show that I can throw you on that'll be, it's going to be a great show, get you guys, but you won't be the headliner, so you'll be support for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "Dude, that's awesome. We'll take it. We'll take whatever you can." And so they came through. They played the Regal Beagle, and goofy ass show, and we had a lot of fun, super fun guys. And then they ended up coming back like a month and a half, something like that later, and opened for Tsunami Bomb. And they had, I don't know, maybe 30 people at the Regal Beagle, and then Tsunami Bomb at Club 101. I think there was like almost 500 kids there for that. And then they came again. Hey, look, there it is again. They ended up coming a few years later as they started getting popular. So that's from first to last there.
Right. I was going to
were-
tell you, Barry, if you happen to see one of these you want me to stop on and like, if you have something to talk about one in particular, by all means, let me know.
Stop right there. We'll talk about
Exactly,
this
that one actually. Seriously, I will stop this one just really quick because the Jealous Sound is one of my favorite fucking bands ever. And I'm pretty sure this was the first one because it was the second time, I think, that you got me on that show where it was Dance Disaster Movement, but we ended up playing as Devices and Shift instead of me by myself. But,
Well,
yeah, holy crap,
I don't
dude.
know, because Dance Disaster Movement wasn't on the flyer for that show because they got added that day.
Okay.
They were never scheduled to play. They just showed
Right.
up and were like, "Hey, we heard there's a show. Is there any chance we can get on?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can't pay you or nothing, but
Right.
yeah, that was
happens more
awesome."
often
I was
than
like,
you
you guys can sell merch," and I mean, they sold a ton of stuff that day.
Yeah.
Mostly to me. I bought
Daniel,
everything
have
they
you had any shows at Lowbrow where they just you get a contact like last minute from a band?
It's happened before. Actually, a lot of times that's not really possible when it comes into context when you have artists that are actually through booking agencies.
Mhm.
But when you book, especially from a band perspective, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Christian Miranda, the guy I was
Yeah.
telling you I play with earlier, but he's the booking guy and the bar manager, or was for Neon Rose before the Rona.
Okay.
And that would happen a
The
lot at
Rona.
like venues like that, and it's so cool to do stuff like that because then you're
Yeah.
able to make contact when you're a musician. I entered
yeah.
this as a
yeah.
musician and someone who would tour, so like you hook up a band and hook you up with a show in their city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, that happens a lot. Not a whole lot, but it did happen a fair amount of times where bands would just show up and be like, "Hey, we know that this is a venue. Do you have any room on the bill?"
Skip them out here. Yeah,
And you
because
gotta figure it out.
Go ahead, Barry.
Oh, I was going to say there was one time. Well, it was a few years ago when that. Oh God, it's probably 10 or 12 years now. That Plain White T's song came out. That Hey There Delilah.
Yeah.
And I just I just remember being like, oh God, why? What? And what had happened years before that was they had called me, and it was just the same thing. They're like, we're passing through. Is there any way that we can jump on a show? And I had a show that night with this band called the Lonely Kings, who had been here a bunch of times, and they're awesome guys, super fun, really good, and really easy to work with. And I was like, hey, do you guys mind if this band plays? They'll open. Nothing fancy. I'm not paying them out of your deal, whatever. And we ended up hanging out all night. The two bands like totally hit it off, became super besties. Lonely Kings were on, I think, Fearless Records at the time, and they ended up having Plain White T's play in L.A. and like Fearless came out and saw the show and hung out. Ended up signing Plain White T's, and then they just blew up after that. So, as soon as I heard that song, I was like, "Oh God, am I to blame for this?"
Holy crap, man! That's a crazy story
together and create this.
What I would hope is at some point they reciprocated the favor and like came back and let you book a show.
I know, right?
They came back a couple of times actually. They came with oh gosh, 10-foot pole or something like that. But they did come back a few times after that, and they were super good guys. I joke about that, but I mean, they were awesome guys to work with and super down to earth and very, appreciative of what they had gotten. So,
right,
yeah, for sure.
Kel in the chat says, hi, Daniel. Hi, Eating Barry. Robert says, hi, Barry.
I am eating.
Robert Benzo Das. So Jacob, yeah. So Jacob clarified his question or his chat here was, from what I've seen, sometimes management and owners cater too much to the talent and worry about putting on good shows, but fail to find ways to make money without just relying on live music. You have to have things that make money to fill in the gaps from off nights. What do you think of that?
Lowbrow.
I think that
Lowbrow as
depends.
of the last 3 years is a perfect example that that's not the case. When we took over, we stopped opening as a bar completely. Like we literally just became a music venue. The amount of shows,
like nonstop.
In my perspective, yeah. Well, we would just do like, depending what month it is, because there's definitely different seasons for shows. And it's not
March.
what you would think, March, April, May are crazy. And then you would think June, July are crazy, but not really, because that's festival season.
Winter.
Tons of bands don't come out. It kind of picks back up in like September, October, dies down all the way back until March. But it was just about getting the highest quality shows, the best artists at the best prices, and just, hammering away. When Splendid Sun took over Lowbrow, that was the goal, and so it took years to realize that goal. But they built a whole team. We had, a dedicated bar management staff. Actually, it was Greg Sosa. I'm sure both of you guys know him.
100%.
And so Greg and I worked really closely together. It was me managing the audio production world. Then we also had a completely separate social media person. Then we had a completely separate talent buyer. So by compartmentalizing everything, we were able to just knock out show after show. You know what I mean? And once we got access to a larger outdoor space, which we can get into eventually. I
actually just want to talk about that. Yeah.
We were able to actually just scale. And at that point, you're just, sky's the limit,
Yeah. So, pardon my ignorance on this, but both of you guys have actually said talent buyer. What do you guys mean by that? Like, I've never heard that term. Yeah.
It's basically like the opposite of what a booking agent is. A booking agent goes out and finds shows for a band. A talent buyer works for either one venue or a grouping of venues to get talent to perform at their venue, which
holy crap
can happen one of two ways. The band can actually reach out to you, or you can actively reach out. A lot of what we did recently in the office over the past 6 months before, Corona or whatever took over. But like 6 months before like the season starts to kick off, you start looking at bands who have announced tours, and you find, can we fit within this realm? So it's an equal mixture of that and also, again, relationships. Knowing booking
100%.
agents,
knowing
that bands are going to be releasing an album and
shit. So
quarter 2 of 2018, and figuring that out.
Yeah, because that sounds like a legit fucking thing to do, as opposed to the way I've always thought of it, which is like you're the band and you're just trying to find places to play. But I guess like when you like kind of like Jacob's point was the idea of how do you fill in, like, so Jacob also said the case was for people that are failing, not for the people that are successful. But I'm also thinking the idea of when you're a band looking for a place to play, but when you're the bar owner and you need to keep people coming in and you need to keep that like consistency, right, of just having people constantly show up and know that there's always a show. Like I always thought about places out of town like Chain Reaction or like even Albuquerque Barry. What was that place called that Luis managed or did the shows at?
Launchpad,
yeah.
Launchpad.
Yeah,
And
like
Sunshine Theater.
Exactly. So those places are places where there's probably every night going to be a show, right? Regardless of what's going on, for the most part, right? But I would assume that's kind of where the talent buyer thing comes in, because now it's like these people need to look for people to come in to those places to perform. It's not like the band is contacting Sunshine Theater to play a show there. I mean, that could obviously be the thing too, but
yeah, some of them are, and one of the things that, that Luis and I had talked about, it was always sort of one of our goals was to have a venue and, sort of be there and know that people could just find out like, oh, there's something going on at XYZ bar tonight. Oh, what is it? I don't know, but it's at XYZ bar, so it's probably good. Right. And so people would just go there.
Yeah.
But to Jacob's point, like, that logic follows that, if management isn't finding the right stuff to have every night or whatever, you start to alienate an audience. If you start to get known as, the heavy metal bar in town, and then you want to have a hip hop night, well, the hip hop kids don't go there, and all of a sudden the metal kids are like, whoa, you're changing, and I've been through that. I've been, in places that are like super rock and roll bars, and then you tell them, oh, dude, I have this amazing 11-piece orchestral emo band, and they just look at you like, nah, dude, bring Cephalic Carnage back, please. Like,
yeah,
okay. And again, I'm not knocking them for that,
no, right.
They get into the mindset of, this is the crowd that we want, and this is the audience that we want to have in our venue, and that's fine. It's the venues that are willing to take chances on a broader, variety of stuff. But places.
So, in that case, though, do you look for a place for that 10-piece orchestral emo band, or are you just kind of like, sorry, man, the place we're playing at, we just don't do those shows or whatever?
No, I would definitely try to find them a place.
Okay.
And sometimes it might be, well, you're going to play in the weirdest club in town.
Yeah. Fucking Wayside, dude.
If you guys are down to do it, we'll do it, and we'll, try to knock it out of the park.
Right.
And that's just, if the bands are cool with it, and the bands and the venue and everything are willing to just say like, hey, fuck it, let's try something new.
Right.
Maybe you'll have super crazy, amazing success.
But so in a case that, how would you handle like the promotion? And in a sense, like, do you think that is it your responsibility as the booker or the promoter, the bookie, to get that show to get people to show up, or is it the responsibility of the name of the band or the familiarity of the band to get people to show up? Right, like
that's a bit of both.
Yeah,
I think for the most part,
that there's a third option to.
Go ahead.
As a talent, sorry to interrupt.
No,
and
all
just to kind of throw this in there, like I'm more of a productive guy. Like I have booked some shows, but I didn't run the booking at Lowbrow. But by osmosis. I would say I've learned a whole lot, but a super important part of a talent buyer in a city is to also be plugged into the local community and the local scene. And if a band is new, being able to provide them with possible support that could maybe bring in some audience for them.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Oh, absolutely. JC, how many
Yeah.
times did we have 6 under par play at the House of Rock and Roll? And
Yeah.
there was that, like, but that kind of gets to a different point, which is at the time the scene was like super diverse, and I admit that I'm kind of out of it these days, so I don't know exactly how it's going now. But we would have a show with a crazy heavy metal band playing first, and then a weird emo band would play second, and then a goofy pop band would play third, and then Promise would come in and do hip hop to close the night.
Fucking
and you're just
A,
like,
dude.
what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
But it was awesome.
Those are some
know?
of the best nights, man. When you have a mixture
Oh,
of
absolutely.
genres.
Absolutely. You can go back and look at some of these flyers and be like, who the hell would
And see, one of
5
the
stars
craziest
red on
things
this
that,
show?
Yeah.
one of the craziest things is when you look at artists that have like booking agents and maybe have enough money to bring on a touring artist. A lot of times, the opening artist that the main act is bringing isn't the same genre as them. A lot of time, it's like a complementary genre, and it just plays to the fact that like there are certain genres like hip hop kids can stand hip hop all night, or heavy metal or hardcore crowds can stand hardcore all night. But if I had like, I don't know, like indie pop or indie dance come in, you can't have 4 bands playing the same thing because it starts sounding the same thing over and over again eventually, you know? So you got to create that diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have, a ska band play first, and then one of JL's bands, metal bands, would come in and play, and then Inex Truants would be super weird for a couple hours or whatever. And,
Right.
it was awesome. you
Yeah.
know? And what was even better than that was like all of those guys were friends, and they would, they'd just hang out and just have a super good time. Regardless of the fact that they were completely different styles. Didn't matter. Didn't matter
Right.
at all.
So, I'll go into the chat a little bit here because, so first and foremost, Barry, Mike says, Mike Kaisi? I don't know how to pronounce that. Says, hey, Barry Peterson, Robert Benzo Das, and then the horns or whatever. And then he also says,
I
places
always
get
do that.
labeled. Places get labeled, and you can't bring in new customers if they only play one type of music. Obviously, that does happen a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you. I remember you remember Surge's
Yeah.
was
100%.
like that.
Yeah.
Surge's was a metal bar.
Yeah.
And that's just like that's what Surge liked. He wanted to have metal bands there, and so we had a bunch of metal bands and sort of that screamo hardcore stuff because it was close enough to metal.
Yeah.
Not quite, but
Yeah. Close enough.
It was
Yeah,
good
no,
enough.
I could see that.
And we had great shows there for sure. But you mentioned earlier, like if a certain kind of band came, would you just shop them around? And if at the time, if a metal band called me, I'd be like, all right, let me call Surge real quick and see if
Right
see if
on.
that date's open for you.
Right. And then Jacob actually, when we were talking earlier, said, I miss those days when it was the idea of like just mixing all these fucking bands together. Because he also said, in fact, it wasn't until hitting the road that I realized that other people found it weird to mesh genres. And
Yeah, that's so strange.
yeah, so I noticed that when I went out to like California and stuff, where it was mostly like, it was just when you play like Chain Reaction and stuff, and it was mostly people like just looking forward to like Yellow Card style music, like
Yeah.
all that kind of style stuff.
I love Yellow Card. By the way.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%, dude. Ocean Avenue specifically, but yeah, you got like your Rufios and that
I don't like
style
their
of stuff.
music.
Yeah. Yeah, like bands like that, right? Like it was all East Coast, and I was always told, they're like, dude, your style, and I've never heard this band. I'm sure, Barry, you probably have. Texas Is the Reason.
Yeah.
I for whatever reason I was compared a lot to them, even though I've never heard them, and I don't know. You probably would know if it would make sense or not. But I was always told to go tour with them and do like Texas and more East Coast, because East Coast was more that style of stuff, and they weren't also like West Coast kind of like
There's
yellow
Inferma.
card for lack of a better description kind of style. What's that? Oh,
I'm
actually, I
telling
wanted to pause
Jacob,
this.
there's
Exactly.
Inferma for you.
Yeah, Jake. So I'm gonna merge this here just because I want to show
Can you
this.
go back?
Yeah, totally. So Jake, if you're still there, it resets every time I do this, so I'll just gotta find it, but it's not too far ahead. There it is.
There
So
it is right there.
yeah. 90 Day Men with Inferma and Maximus, which to me seems to make absolute sense. But this is one of those things I was going to ask is when you have bands that are all the complete same, like, is that also a negative at some point, right? Or is it,
It all depends.
I think
on
it all
the
depends.
audience.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you, have
if
three
the audience is just
Godspeed,
like,
yeah, back to
yeah,
back.
if the audience is just like,
Uh-oh. I think we lost Barry there for a sec.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. While we get to see if Barry comes back here, I was going to point out that yeah, Jacob says awesome show. So I was going to say if he had any like background on that or any of this show. We'll see if Barry comes back, but yeah, Daniel, do you have anything to share in that sense, in the idea of like having shows where you just kind of like mash stuff together and it's like a mix of different bands? Like, how do you, if you do, like, do you ever notice, you know, like the crowd just kind of be turned off by it? Or like, you know what I mean? If you have like a metal band and then a hip hop band and the rest of the night it's all hip hop, like, are people just kind of dismissive of like the hip-hop?
Majority of the time that I experienced that is when we were doing primarily local shows. Like, by the time that I started getting involved, they were not really booking like random artists. Like, artists weren't contacting the bar themselves. It was through booking agencies, which I think when you get to that tier, it kind of just changes the way that the game works in terms of flexibility. Because now there's like a third party involved. But yeah, when you would do local shows, I honestly, even going back to playing in bands myself, I preferred to do a variety. And I mean, there would definitely be a certain percentage of people who would get turned off, but you know, by and large, you know, from what I've seen, and maybe this sounds a little naive, but people that generally appreciate music, that go to shows because they want to go to shows and not because they would just want to take a picture for Instagram, will generally enjoy everything that's being performed, you know, even if it's a little bit weird, because they're there to see live music. And
Good, we got you back.
you know,
100%.
if anything has you know, has come out of the whole Corona situation, is like how vital live shows are to, like, you know, people.
Oh yeah, dude, 100%.
People's emotional health and stuff like that. Because I mean, over the past 6 years, I think I've worked like 400 to 500 shows, and now I haven't gone to a show in 4 months. So it's definitely hard, you know.
Yeah.
But most people that go to see live music, the point that I'm making, most people that go to see live music are appreciative of seeing any live music, you know.
Well, so Jacob asked. Jacob said it kind of in that same idea that, but he is kind of referencing more the past, where he says that the audience was much more susceptible to that kind of thing back then. Do you think that's still something that people are cool with nowadays, as opposed to like how you said, like people who are just there to take an Instagram picture and be like, "I'm at this show"?
Well, so nowadays it's a little bit weird. I'm involved in, like I said earlier, like a lot of hip hop or kind of like new age, like pop kind of music and stuff like that. And what you feel now is like genres are starting to get mashed up to a point where there's not really individual genres. It's more like kind of groups of genres that sit together nowadays. So like a hip hop artist might tour with like an indie pop artist that might have like a little bit of hip hop production in their music. So like you won't really see the differences between like getting a legit hip hop artist and like a metal artist or an emo artist and like a, you know, a folksy artist. Now genres, like I said, are kind of like in a bubble. So instead of individual genres, there's kind of like a grouping now. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, so I was actually I got thrown off because I was paying attention to the chat, but there was something I was going to ask you guys about, the idea of for the musician, right? Like how much, because so Mike threw this in the chat, and it made me think about this. This is one of the reasons I was going to bring it up. He was talking about how there was this place in Germany that was huge, but they had 5 different bars. Essentially, I'm going to sum it up a bit, but it was basically like you would go like to a rave bar, and then all of a sudden, if you were done with that, you'd go to like a country western bar or whatever. You could go to different bars that were different blends of stuff, but then it's like for the musician, like the artist or whatever, like. Do you not think that like affects the like people wanting to like people finding new stuff? Is it just like are those just kind of like the bar type people that just kind of jump from one place to the other and have no real interest in following bands, you think? Or in El Paso you can't really do that either anyway, right? Because
El Paso's
there's no single
very
spot you can go
market.
to jump up and down.
Yeah.
To different places.
I mean
Jump up and down.
that sounds more.
I mean, yeah.
Sounds more to me like a situation for people that just want to go out and find something, you know.
Mhm.
And really, that doesn't really exist in El Paso. When people go out to watch live music, it's because they want to go see that band playing.
Yeah.
People
Yep.
in El Paso don't just go out like in Austin or New Orleans or LA, where there's enough happening and there's enough people that exist in that region
Right
to
on.
just go out to want to see a random live band.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist here.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
But
Barry,
I'll
because
say though-
there's a question in the chat that I want to bring up that kind of goes with this. But go ahead if you were going to say something.
I'll say that's kind of a double-edged sword, though. Unfortunately, places like Austin, I just do not like Austin.
Knife hands.
I don't like the vibe there and everything.
100%.
And it's one of those things where, yeah, like people are going out and there are things to do, but you also hear so much of people who are like, well, I really like that band, but I'm not going because I went to these 3 other shows that were okay earlier this week, or there's so much going on that I forgot about it, And so you have to kind of find that balance between, having a ton of things to do and being the only game in town, right?
Well,
You
so
want to have Go ahead.
the biggest upside that El Paso has, and this is why I love the El Paso music scene, is that if you're a band and people like you that are from El Paso, they will love you forever, and they will buy a shitload of merch, and they will always support you. There's a perfect scenario. There's a band called the Marias, which I love that band. And if you guys haven't checked them out, they're just like an indie, chill rock band with a female vocalist, but they played Lowbrow indoor years ago to like maybe 50 people, and like less than a year later they sold out. And
Holy
then we
crap.
did an almost sold out show outdoor. I think it was like 1,400 people outdoor, like no more than 12 months later. So that is what I do appreciate about El Paso, is that like if you can hook into the scene here, like you will get nothing but love. I mean, that doesn't go for local artists, but that goes for like touring artists, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Burn, man. Burn. So,
Hey, it's the truth though. I mean, you guys
I know.
No, you're right, because we would have bands that would come through. We used to joke that we got bands on the way up and then on the way down. We would get them right before they got really
Absolutely.
big, and then 10 years after their hits. There were early days when, when we would have the Ataris, for example. It's an easy example, and 100 kids would show up, and then a couple years later, I remember I was in Austin and I had booked the Ataris for a South by Southwest show in El Paso on their way down. And Luis came down from Albuquerque to run it, and I was freaking out because he had called me at like 4 o'clock. He's like, there's nobody here, like that nobody showed up yet. And then I didn't hear from him all night. And I'm like, oh my God, we just lost our asses on this. Like we're ruined. And he calls me in the morning, and he's like 700 kids showed up, and they wrecked all the booths in the bar. I'm like, oh my God.
damn. Dude, and that's
Funny
crazy,
you
right?
use
To
the
think that.
Ataris.
Yeah, like that
They-
was
they
back in the
actually-
day before fucking being able to text message each other and everything. And
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, Daniel, go ahead. And then I'm going to get
just
to a
like
question in the chat,
mention,
but
to
go
mention on the way down, we just had the Ataris, not to like bash on them or anything, but I mean, obviously they're not top 40 anymore. But we had them maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and yeah, I mean, we sold I think less than 100 tickets.
really, I was going to
Which
say
is
because I don't
crazy.
think
It's
the
crazy to
Ataris have
think that
always
that
had good
happens.
turnouts here. right, Barry? For the most part,
last-
like, is that
Yeah, for
the kids
us,
from
they always-
Juarez,
changing.
man? The kids from Juarez
see,
would
the
show
hard
up.
part-
Yeah,
Yeah.
The hard part about El Paso is since we have a limited population, even including the Juarez population, like you have to be really careful how often here, because you can definitely dilute the market if you come more than once in a year, or even like an 18-month period. You
Oh,
know,
for sure.
because eventually people
Yeah.
will say, "I've seen them. Like I'm not gonna go pay $20 to go see that band that I've seen 4 times
Yeah.
already." You know what I mean?
right.
Unless
Oh,
there's like
yeah,
legit
absolutely.
great new material. You know what I mean? Like that's really the only use case. But-
Yeah.
Yeah,
You start hearing a lot of that. Well, last time they were here, I only paid $5. Why is it $20 this time? And you're like, well,
We'll see.
you know,
See,
they're
that
they're
was
bigger
what-
now. We have to pay them more.
Exactly. Well, see, and that was like the biggest, and we can definitely take that question, but this kind of like leads into like the outdoor whole lowbrow situation happening. And the hard part was like, there's not a whole lot of like mid-sized rooms in El Paso. Pretty much everything that exists here is small. Like the only room that existed that was mid-sized was Tricky Falls on a large scale. So when you're a promoter, like you can't scale from a 200 to 500 or 7 or 800 cap room, you know, to the Coliseum or to the Don Haskins. Like, I mean, it's very difficult to do. You know what I mean? Especially with costs and everything, unless the artist, you know, brings in that much money.
That was,
Whatever you
yeah,
need to do,
I'll
Barry.
tell you, working at the House of Rock and Roll, that was one of the like most ideal things about that place was once we expanded it, we could fit, I think our capacity there was like 580 or something like that, which isn't quite, you know, 1,000 mid-range capacity, but 500 is a lot of freaking kids in this town. If it's a smaller band, we just drop the curtain, cut that room down
Right.
to like 100 capacity.
Right.
You could pack that place 5 nights a week,
Exactly.
which was a lot of fun.
That's
And
beautiful,
there were times when bands would come in and be like, yeah, well, we'd tell them, well, we sold 300 tickets, so there's gonna be that many kids, and they'd tell us like, no, we want to play the small room because we want everyone right up close to us,
Right.
you know. And we would all just moan and cry about how hot it was going to be in there, but
Yeah.
for sure.
you do what you do.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's still plenty more stuff we could talk about that there, Barry. But I want to get to a question in the chat here, which I thought was a pretty damn good question. And it's not just because of who it comes from, but so I also got distracted because I was about to say something else. But anyway, the question comes. Yeah, that's me to a T. So our buddy Hector, of course, in Subharmonic City. I got to say the name because he does some solid videos. If you guys need video production work, reach out to subharmoniccityproductions.com. He says, "Hey guys, you've booked shows, you've played shows, you've worked the scene, but you personally, what were the last 3 shows, concerts you willingly went to?" Let's start with Barry.
Jesus.
God damn it, that's a hard
That's
question.
why I said
man.
that was a good question.
I can't. What was the last?
While you guys think of that, I'll go to the next question because it's not really a question; it's more a statement. But it was something we were talking about earlier that Mike says. Also, I know this is totally random, but let me know in the chat if the audio sounds good. For reasons, but just let me know if it sounds good. Mike says another thing with El Paso is the parking to events. We kind of went into that earlier with the lowbrow thing. I hated finding a place to park to see an artist and wouldn't eventually bother with it. I hated finding a place to park to see an artist and wouldn't eventually bother with it. Okay.
Can't find parking, so you just go home.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
That's everywhere. That's everywhere.
That
in El
happens.
Paso, though.
Yeah.
That sucks, man. So I guess Tricky Falls was pretty good about that, right? Because I mean, there's parking everywhere. It's just that you had to pay for it everywhere. Like no matter where you went, you had to park in the parking spot or in that little parking garage. You'd have to pay like $10 or depending on what the show was. Yeah, parking is a bitch.
Street parking's
El
free after
Paso
6, bro.
definitely.
Is it? Okay. All right, then.
El
Yeah, maybe
Paso
then. I guess
definitely
you just
did
have to
not,
park all the way
build-
ass down Overland, and then you're like worried about getting stabbed.
El Paso definitely didn't build a good infrastructure system here, so I mean, it is what it is, you know.
Yeah. Better than
But no,
control
it is
now, I
a
guess.
pain in the ass. It
Yeah.
is a super pain in the ass. I think the best place to go see a show that has legitimate parking, but I think they still force you to pay it is the Coliseum. I mean, even going to shows at UTEP is a fucking pain in the ass, you know?
Yeah.
But,
So to put you guys back on the spot, what's the 3 concerts you can think of that you went to?
I can't.
I honestly can't.
I was going to say, are you guys
Last
hesitating just because it's been that long, or you just can't really think of something that you guys actually willingly went to? Because that was kind of the
No,
point
it's
that
been
Hector
a
made.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's been a while.
All right, so
He says, "Boo."
This is the saddest part about being in the industry for so long. I began as a musician when I started playing drums when I was 12 years old. And I've loved to see live music ever since. I remember my first arena concert when I was 9. My mom took me to Pan Am to go see Rod Stewart, you know? Like,
Holy shit.
Like, I remember all these concerts from when I was a kid, and I remember all these great memories. But now that I've experienced so many shows, I could see, like, my favorite band in the world, but I'll see, like, 4 songs and be like, all right, I'm out. Like,
Really?
that's all
Why?
I need.
How come?
I don't know. It's
It's
It
exhausting.
becomes clinical at a certain point. It becomes clinical at a certain point, and then you always have that thing in the back of your head, like, JC, I believe your first instrument was guitar, so I'm sure when you listen to music now, you listen to the guitar first.
Like
when I listen
guitar
to
was my
music, I
first, but
listen
it's
to
drums. Yeah, I actually.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I listen to drums. So, like, I revel in the ability to, like, I have a nephew who's 10 years old, and I love to just show him music because I almost kind of, like, use his reaction on the music to kind of remember what it's like to really take in something as a whole, and going to live events. At some point, you're like, oh, what console are they using? I wonder what mics they're using. And like, oh, that looks not okay on the stage, blah, 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 this, and this. And you're just like,
You start to
"All right, man."
overanalyze everything, and you can't enjoy the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago when Weezer played the street festival downtown.
Right.
And Luis and I went, and we're backstage, so we're watching sort of from the side behind, and that's one of my favorite bands of all time. And I'm watching, and the whole time I'm just like, why would they put the stairs to the drum riser right there? Like, it would make sense to have it behind him,
Yeah.
so he could go straight down off of the stage. Now they're making him go onto the stage and around to the. I was like, it's that kind of dumb stuff that you find
But-
yourself just like
So, Ben,
overanalyzing.
That's hold on, because like I don't mean this in a bad way, Barry, but I would not expect that of you. I would think you'd be the person who would just watch the show, and that would be the last fucking thing on their mind.
Because
Wow.
there were so many nights when I'd have to be watching those bands and just the whole time thinking like, oh shit, if that mixer goes out, what are we gonna do? Or if he like that mic cord, do we have a spare? What's gonna happen?
Okay. All right.
And so it just got that. It just gets in your mind. You spend so much time watching it and thinking of, not like how would I do this better, but it's like, oh, that's an odd choice. Why? I wonder why they did that. Like, I wonder if they had to bring in their own, input systems or whatever for that.
Yeah.
Just like,
wow, dude,
so,
that is crazy.
And I, like Daniel said, after, I'd booked shows for like 13 years. And so, even conservatively saying 100 a year,
yeah,
I don't know, it's 1,000-ish shows.
Just starts to
you
build
get
up that
burned out.
subconscious.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
From the perspective of an audio engineer, this is the hardest part, JC, is that when you go to a show, it's fucking fantastic if it sounds great, and I can totally deal with it if it sounds like shit, because then I can just say, oh, this guy is shitty. But if you have like something in the middle, like that there's something weird in the mix that you can't figure out, it just eats away at my soul, because I'm like, what's going on? Like, is there too much compression? What kind of reverb are they using? I don't know if that EQ curve is the right thing that they're doing, and it's just like it just eats away at your mind over and over and over again.
Dude,
I can't I
No.
can't imagine paying for a concert anymore, bro, because like I can't enjoy it.
Well,
Not
that's
because I'm being an asshole, but like
No,
it's
no,
like,
no,
I
yeah.
can't enjoy it.
It makes sense because like if Kel's watching this is awesome because like I tell her these things and she thinks I'm fucking crazy because she's that type of person that's just like, yeah, I'm here for the show.
Well,
like, what
so
the hell? She has no
what's weird-
concept of that type of stuff. And when I'm talking about like the mics are being off or whatever, yeah.
What's weird is like I've now really grown a love of like just live events in general. I started doing like AV events, like conferences and TED Talks, like the TEDx that happens here. I've been producing it for the past 3 years.
I've been wanting to do that.
On the
That's
technical
awesome.
side.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, but like one of the more complex things, it's kind of like one of those things like you learn your first few chords or your first drum beat, then you want to get more complex. I love going to musicals because they're so intense on production.
Oh yeah.
That it's like I can't necessarily fathom what's happening anymore because it's out of my scope of understanding. I can kind of
Dude,
take
It's a
guesses.
whole
but,
other
like,
world, man.
Yeah.
there's like 50 microphones on stage,
Oh, yeah.
and, there's
And then flipping
cues
them
that
on
are
and off.
happening, and then all this like craziness, and like so like I watch like YouTube videos, or like I've gone to a couple musicals here, and I'm just like, it's one of those things. It's like it takes the rug out of underneath you because now you're seeing it for what it is, not
Right.
for what's happening behind the scenes. You know, like working production, just to kind of mention like what Barry said about the stairs. Like I can remember the first few shows where I'm watching, and like I see microphones just laying on the front of the stage, and it's like, oh, there's the spares, and then you kind of see something white on the floor monitors, and it's like, oh, it's because it's an old ass fucking singer. He doesn't remember the lyrics to his music, and they had to tape,
Yeah.
they had to write the lyrics out, or whatever. Or all of a sudden you see like this weird black pad sitting on the floor. It's all because Third Eye Blind singer has bad knees and he can't stand straight on the floor for an hour. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
Like you just start seeing small little things like that.
Well, that's crazy because I can turn that on and off, but
I can't.
I in the back of my head. So, only in the sense that like because so. I tend to make these shows more about the guests that are on, but just because Hector asked the question, and I do happen to know these 3 bands that I've had, it was Coheed and Cambria, Jealous Sound, and Foo Fighters. So all 3 of those bands were I went willingly because Kel got me tickets to them.
So that
because
that
I
makes me
wanted
sad.
to, but
Foo Fighters,
what's that?
Foo Fighters, their van tour was the show that I was gonna pay to go to in Albuquerque. They had
Okay.
planned out that van tour that was supposed to launch, I think, late March, and they were gonna play Albuquerque at some arena like in April, mid-April. And I had gotten offered to work with a company out there to do some like electrical stuff, but I said no, and I didn't buy a ticket. I found a free ticket, but like I was planning on going to enjoy that show, and that was like the one show I was gonna try to go enjoy. That makes me sad that you mentioned Foo Fighters.
Yeah, and really quickly, just because Hector says, oddly enough, that's the kind of answer I was expecting. Because after being in it, you can't just relax and enjoy as a spectator anymore. It's a curse for musicians, sound engineers, bookers, basically anyone in the industry. Mike says, I've been staying inside, and after listening to you guys reminisce, I want to go out and see a band now. You guys suck. Like talking about pizza, I'm on a diet. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that, you talk about stuff like, paying attention to the production and not being able to turn that off. Another thing for me was like, eventually, if certain bands would come, it would come through that you had worked with in the past, like there would be nights when I'd be like, oh shit, I got to deal with these guys again. Like crap. Like I'm just not, this is going to ruin my night.
Shit.
Like
a band in particular, or?
Yeah, Deicide. All kinds of bands that would come through.
Yeah.
That might be called Deicide or something like that.
Yeah.
But, like we talked earlier about what you do if the bands freak out about stuff.
Yeah.
I remember when Deicide came, the first time that I booked them, I talked to their booking agent and I was like, look, man, I'd love to have them because I think they'll do great here. But Glenn Benton is known to be a dick. Like he treats people like shit. And I'm not going to that's just not going to fly, because that was me working for Mario at the House of Rock and Roll. And I was like, Mario's going to flip his lid and he's going to throw this dude out.
Yeah.
And so like, I made it super clear right up front from the beginning. I was like, I'm going to write your contract and Glenn is going to sign it. And if he bitches about anything, I'm going to throw him out and I'm not going to pay him.
Yeah.
And so I remember when they showed up, one of the conditions, we had to buy him dinner. And it was just like, must provide meals for 8 people or whatever it was. And so Mario got Japanese kitchen to cater. I mean, they had this huge spread.
Yeah.
And Glenn Benton comes in screaming like, who the fuck told you I would eat Chinese food? Well, I'm not eating this. And the rest of the band is like, dude, this sushi's amazing. And Glenn was just off his rocker. And we're like, I don't know, man. Just as I'd feed you. If you don't want to eat it, I don't care. But that's what you get. And, he was a pain in the ass all night. And it's that kind of thing that just makes you like, I don't ever want to deal with this crap again. Certainly
Right.
not 2 more times over the
100%.
next 3 years when they came back multiple times. But they made money. And,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I was a capitalist and got to make the money. And
Yeah.
for all his bitching all night, when you hand him that stack of cash,
Yeah.
he stops.
Was that the show that Stickle ran? Because I remember they came once and I didn't run sound that night.
Stickle.
I was off. Yeah. Oh shit!
Yeah.
You know Stickle, dude?
I bought my first PA off of Stickle when I was
Nice.
like 15 years old.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
And my first double pedal from him too.
Okay, rad. Yeah, Stickle's got a. Stickle was a badass part of this fucking city for a good while there, man.
What was it on Copia, his shop that he
Yep.
had over there?
Yeah, Stickle Acoustics.
They broke a monitor or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they were crying about it. And he's just like, "What do you want me to do about it, man?"
Yeah,
I've had,
I'm glad he ran that because he was obviously a lot more skilled in this stuff than I was. But yeah, I'm glad he did because first of all, I can't stand bands like that, and I don't like just the music itself. I probably would have still been professional about it, but regardless, it was just like yeah.
Just regardless.
Yeah, post regardless, bro.
Well, to jump off of what Barry had mentioned about dealing with asshole artists and stuff like that, like
Okay, so
I think
hold on real
someone was
quick, just
mentioning-
because this is going to go with
Go
that.
ahead.
This question in the chat is super simple, but just if this is going to go with it. So if Barry has anything to come off of, also, which that fit what he just said fits this anyway. But so Mike asked, what was the worst show you've ever had? And then I like to hear about dumpster fires. And then Jacob says, I can totally see Mario trying to throw Glenn out. Yeah, 100%. Before, like, not even thinking of, like, yeah, just the concept of having him show up is the idea of having that happen. But anyway, go ahead, Danielle, because I thought you were going with what this was. So
there's kind of, so there's a balance. To allude to an earlier question, I think someone was asking, like, how do you stay in business when you have to cater to the artist? It's like you're not really catering to the artist, you're pre-agreeing to all the terms and conditions. So if the artists break those terms and conditions, or they're being assholes about it, then fuck them. I've had so many bands, like especially hip-hop and like hardcore artists, that like throw the microphone against the stage or up against the wall, and I deduct it from their settlement. I'm like, fuck you, bro. Like, you broke my equipment, I'm gonna take my money back. Or if they mistreat somebody in the audience, we'll not have them again, or whatever. We'll hold a portion of their earnings or whatever. But it's not, oh, the artists, they get whatever the fuck they want. It's like, nah, you get what we agreed to. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's
makes
that's
sense.
really what that
We
comes
had,
down
Straight up
to.
writers.
When Trail of Dead played at Cantina La Tuya
Oh,
years
shit.
and years ago.
Yeah.
During their set, the drummer took his snare drum, and in front of La Tuya was a seafood restaurant before that,
Yeah.
and so they had those like round galley windows, like as if it were a boat.
Yeah.
And so the drummer from Trail of Dead picked up his snare drum and threw it through that window.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the night, I'm just like, well, you got to pay for that window, bro. Like,
Yeah.
this is
And-
this is what it costs.
It's
so
part of
do
the
they-
art, though, bro. It's part of my
Right.
art.
Well, I mean, so yeah, that's the thing,
That's
right?
fine,
It's
but-
like, yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, if you're gonna do that, own it. But that was my question, Barry. Is like, did they or were they assholes about it?
No, they totally did.
Okay,
they totally
cool.
owned it. They were like,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
At
Yeah.
the end
And
of the
he
day,
threw the mic.
bands are a business. So.
That's
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they know sometimes wrecking shit is just cost of doing business.
Yeah. As long as you're willing to like own up that and pay for it or whatever, right? Yeah. So it's super different when people are like super entitled and think whatever. But oh man, I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say something about that and I forgot. Well, I guess just continue on the dumpster fires if Barry, if you have anyone. Oh, that's what I was gonna say real quick. Was that I remember that hole in the wall or that hole in the window, and you showing me a picture of it, and it was in the shape of Texas. which remember that? That was fucking cool.
Yeah.
So
It really wasn't, but it was close enough that we would all be like, "Oh."
yeah. That was random. But yeah, so Barry, do you have any shows you can think of as dumpster fires?
Well,
I mean, I'm sure there are a
was the
couple,
night-
but yeah.
yeah. Well, there was the night that I got the crap beat out of me, but
Right.
even that, like, from a show perspective, that wasn't even so bad because half of the bands that were there were awesome
Yeah.
and super cool and whatever. So,
Yeah.
but I think about bands like Voodoo Glow Skulls
Mm-hmm.
when they came. We had a show booked with them, and it was Voodoo Glow Skulls, Yellow Card, I think,
Oh.
Don't Look Down, and Kissfits.
Mm-hmm.
Is that who it was? Which was this Misfits cover band that dressed up like us, but anyway.
Nice.
Yeah, Voodoo Glow Skulls were total just D-bags. I mean,
Really?
they were the worst band that I've ever dealt with. Glenn Benton aside, like, Voodoo Glow Skulls were freaking awful. And so they ended up just storming out. They didn't play.
Holy
And I was like,
crap.
well, you know, your contract says you're going to play or you don't get paid. So if you leave, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I'm just not paying you.
Right.
And they had a guarantee. They were guaranteed like $1,000 for the night, which is not
Player
an
not
insignificant sum. No, if they played. If
Okay.
they don't play, they don't get shit.
Okay.
But so the other bands on the bill, you know, we're meeting with them afterwards and just being like, hey, look, here's what's going on. Your headliner just quit. They're not playing the show. We can cancel it if you guys don't want to play. That's fine. But I'm leaving it up to you. And the rest of the bands were like, no, fuck those guys. Like, they have a guarantee. We get paid door deals. If we don't play, you know, we don't get to go to the next town.
Yeah.
So they stuck around. They were super awesome. That's why, you know, when I mentioned earlier that I love Yellow Card, that was one of the shows that they stuck around. They were super awesome guys. They played the show. They kicked ass. And
And how was
yeah,
turnout
it
for the
turned
show?
out good. There were probably, I don't know, 150, 200 kids, something like that.
And were
So it
any of
wasn't a
those
small
people?
show.
No, of course. So what I'm trying to get at is, were any of those people pissed off that the band quit, and were they like, all right, well, fuck this kind of thing, you know?
I don't think anybody left when they found out Voodoo Glow Skulls weren't playing.
Oh, cool.
and that was one of the funny things was, you know, when he was yelling at me, he's like, we can go to any venue in this town and sell out every single night of the week. I'm like, all right, right on. But tonight,
Yeah.
here's what's happening. You know?
Wow,
And so,
man. Did they
Yeah.
ever come back after that?
yeah, I never booked them again,
Okay.
but they did end up coming back.
Okay.
But I hate them.
That's what you're ending on there. Daniel,
Yeah.
do you have any?
I wouldn't say any dumpster fires per se, because again, I don't
Oh,
really
yeah,
deal with
just bad shows.
on a big scale. On a big scale, I don't deal with like the money side of things, and in most cases, unless I'm having to rent in production for the artist. But I have had a couple of shows where like artists are super divas. We actually had this band play an outdoor show last year. Although I'm not affiliated with Splendid Sun at the moment, like I don't feel comfortable saying the
No,
name.
of course.
But this band showed up. They had lighting that they did in advance with us. I had rented one generator that was going to cover our stuff. We ended up having to bring in a second generator. They weren't happy with like the restroom arrangements, although they were explained to that they were going to have like, you know, not porta potties, but like those really nice porta potties. They bitched about that. We ended up having to get them a hotel room for the day. It was like a
Wow.
whole thing, and they just refused to play. But at that point, to be honest with you, the contract was vague enough to where we could have gotten fucked, and then on top of that, they were working with a booking agent that we didn't want to piss off.
Mhm.
So we ended up losing a shit ton of money because they didn't even sell that many tickets for the show. So we had already lost our ass on that. But adding in all those additional expenses, like, it really fucking kicked our ass.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, coming from the festival perspective, because we haven't really talked about that, but I've worked as a production manager and stage manager for probably 18 festivals by now.
Mhm.
And those problems that you experience are fucking next level, bro. Like, you can't even imagine, you know
How
what I
so?
mean?
Yeah, and again, you don't have to
Um,
mention band names, dude. It's not like we're here to talk shit about bands. It's just the
Yeah,
experience
for sure.
itself for people who possibly want to get into this
That's what
style
I'm here
thing.
for.
But hey,
Some of the-
there you go, man.
Some of
That's
the
why I like you,
craziest,
Barry.
like, some Some of the craziest things that I've experienced is like a lot of these shows happen on mobile stages, and like if you don't get like great production companies, because when it shifts to festivals, I change from an audio engineer to a production manager. So I'm in charge of sourcing everything and then discussing things with the artist team and then bringing those two together. So I'm basically the middleman at that point, and then I make sure that it goes well. Last year there was an issue at Neon Desert where the audio company didn't properly strap a drum monitor, and it fell on top of the drummer right as the set was supposed to start and cut his head open. Like,
Holy shit!
there's a whole
Wow.
lot of shit that happened. You know, I'm sure there was a lawsuit that was involved with that. But like when it comes to logistics, like especially in El Paso, when you get those high winds on the outdoor shows, those stages can only take so much abuse, and like the audio systems can only take so much abuse. So it's setting up contingencies like that, and then artists coming in and not being willing to work with the equipment that you provide, but this equipment is like top of the line gear and no one else owns it in El Paso. I don't know if you guys know this name, but Rod Crosby has saved my ass more than one time.
Oh yeah,
Like,
100%.
he saved a lot of
he's
people's
my,
asses.
Yeah.
he's like my savior, man. Anytime I need anything, I call him and he's there. And he has such an eclectic mixture of equipment, it's crazy.
Yeah,
But
he's
usually
been doing
for
it
me,
for
when
40 years, saving asses.
No, I love that guy to death.
Saving
but,
asses.
when it comes down to it, it's like production issues. The biggest dumpster fires or like crazy issues I've had is when like really boutique equipment just doesn't want to work and there's no other viable option in the region. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it gets kind of crazy on that front.
Yeah, real quick, Barry, just because it came in the chat here. Kyle McElligott says, Barry,
Yep.
grow that hair back out.
I was
Is that picture in the
and
background?
I was gonna give a shout out to Kyle because there's a picture that's going through in the in the cycle here of him playing back at La Tuya 1,000 years ago, and I just Kyle is having a big change in his life today, and I just want to let that kid know that I'm thinking about him. And I won't go into detail, but I'm really glad he stopped in. I'm really glad he stopped in.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, is it?
Let's see, find that picture. Keep going.
Yeah, I'm going.
Keep going.
Oh,
That's
it's
not
right there, man. It's a guy with the hair. I got the chat coming in here, but it came out really small, so
Oh, oof,
it's gonna
really
be in
tiny
here.
there.
Yeah, this settings here on my thing are different. Oh, I know why. It's the wrong one. That should work. So anyway, let's go ahead and go through this one. You let me know.
That's
Barry.
probably the next one. Nope. No. There you go.
Oh, right on.
That's the
nice.
kid.
I'll pause it on there. He says, "Thanks, bro. I appreciate that, Barry." I think I know Kyle also, so
God
yeah,
damn
I
it.
don't know
That
what's
was-
going on, man. But whatever it is,
This was
good
probably
luck.
like 2000. I think
That's Latuya, right?
that's La Tuya. Yeah.
I remember the pink.
Oof.
Yeah. Dang, man.
Those are the days.
Yeah, 100%. He's playing his guitar like a bass? Oh, it looked like he was doing the finger stuff. He says, "Man, old school. Those are great days." Hell yeah, man. Fucking A. Daniel, how far back? Because like, I only met you through work, through the day job. I think directly.
Yeah.
Yeah. How far back did you start playing shows? Like, what was the year that you started playing shows?
Well, so I started like playing shows like in high school in the Northeast. I'm from the Northeast, but
Like,
I didn't really
was
start,
Kilo and the
like,
Do your
in
first
the
band?
music scene?
Yeah.
In the scene, yes. You know, before
Okay.
that, I did some like cover band work and stuff like that. But I think I was 24, 23 when Kilo and the Do started. So I'm super newbie to the scene. Like, I think I got into the scene maybe 2012 or 13.
Mhm.
Prior to
Oh,
then,
damn.
I had gone to some local shows, but I've only been working or playing as a musician in the scene for like maybe 8 years or so at this
Right
point.
on.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of these stories that you guys are talking about, like about La Tuya and like all these
Nice.
other crazy places, just because I've been around, you know, Luis Mota, Gabe Gonzalez, Greg Sosa, Bobby Welch, you know, like those are all people that have like
Oof.
deeply impacted me being in the scene. You know what I mean? Because I've either worked with them, worked for them, or just got to know them.
Yeah.
Gabe Gonzalez has produced pretty much every album that I've released as an artist. He's always my recording engineer, and JC actually made that connection. I think JC is a huge reason why I'm in the industry the way that I am, because he made a bunch of connections for me back in the day.
Awesome, man. I didn't know that, but
It's funny.
yeah.
You mentioned Bobby Welch. When I was in college, I did for one of my classes. I don't remember what it was. We were supposed to interview someone who was like working in a job that we would want to do, and I did my interview with Bobby Welch. I had known her for years before that, but it was just funny to be like,
I love
Bobby, this is for a school. Let's chat. So
I love Bobby to death. So taking it all the way back, I think when you released, I think it was the Howard Rourke record, you performed at Tricky Falls by yourself. You invited me to the show, and prior to that, you had given me like a preview of the album, and I was like, oh, it sounds great. Who mixed it? And then you told me Gabe mixed it, and then you introduced me to Gabe at Tricky Falls.
Right.
The night of your show. That's how I got to know
There's
Gabe. Now
Latuya,
Gabe
yeah.
is like,
Yep. Who's that in the background, Barry?
that's my friend Pat.
Oh, okay. In the chat,
Sorry.
Andy Morales says, "Love playing Latuya." Yeah, dude. Fucking Latuya was
Super
just
good times.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Kyle said in the chat, what happened? I'm assuming by putting in the chat, he's cool with you saying it. But yeah, congrats, man. That's crazy. He says, "As we speak,"
Right?
Barry. So just so you know,
As we speak.
yeah. Kyle also says, "Pat!" exclamation marks.
Pat!
Oh well, yeah. The chat should have came up in the screen here, so that was the whole purpose of
I
it.
see it now.
Okay, yeah, yeah, man. So I mean, that's kind of the idea. Is like this whole thing of just playing shows, and so Barry, this is kind of why I brought this up earlier. The idea of whose responsibility you think it is to make the show like. How do I put this? So I'm trying to reference. There was a band that you had at House of Rock and Roll when I was running sound there, where I remember going to Mario's office at the end of the night, and they were just like super pissed that like no one showed up and they didn't make any money off the show and stuff like that. And I don't remember who that was. Who?
Vanna.
Oh, damn.
Vanna.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember that very clearly.
Yeah, because
Oh,
man. Go ahead, man. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so it was Vanna and a couple other bands, and the other bands had been here before, and Vanna had not, and they were playing on a door deal. So it's like, if people show up, you're going to make a lot of money. If not, you're not going to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the other bands were like, yeah, it's cool. Like we have fun here. We've been through. We know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And Vanna was just like, all right, so we'll go ahead and do it. And at the end of the night, I think we ended up paying Vanna like $30, which is not much. It isn't, like I know it, but that was just I don't think we paid you that night.
No, not at all.
And you were on staff, so we didn't pay you. I know I didn't get paid.
Right.
I didn't get paid for half of those shows, but whatever.
Yeah.
And those dudes just like they lost their minds. Like, how can you bring bands here and not pay them? Like, we're worth more than this. I'm like, you're clearly not, because nobody fucking came to see you. So
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I felt bad for the bands with them, because those bands were just like, well, you guys could have left. Like, we didn't make you stay and play. Like,
Yeah.
it was super clear right from the beginning that if you don't think you're going to make money, you don't have to stay. Like, just go.
Yeah.
I have my contract that says you're going to play, but I'll hold you, no fault. If you want to go, I'll not pay attention to this contract. But if you stay, you got to stick up with this.
Yeah.
And what your question is, about like whose responsibility is it? Is it the promoter? Is it the venue? Is it the band? And it's everybody's responsibility.
Right.
They're in the scenes where we work and have worked. There are not many bands that are big enough that they can just show up and not do any work and still have good shows.
Right.
There just aren't that many bands with big enough names. For a while, if we had the Ataris, put the Ataris on a flyer and post it one day at All That Music, and 500 kids would show up.
Right, right.
But other bands that were awesome bands, how many times did the Jealous Sound come here, and how many times did they have more than 100 people?
Right.
Probably came 5 times and never had more than 50
Yeah.
ish.
If
But
anything,
that's not
that
because they're
one
not good
time.
bands.
No, exactly. Yeah. If
Yeah.
anything, it was that one time they played 101.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember that being a good turnout. But I think that was also with Cursive or some other big band.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But
Might be
the
wrong,
the promoters have to do just that. They got to promote.
Yeah.
You got to get the word out in media. Nowadays, you got to get it on Facebook events and whatever. You got to get it all over the place. Back when I was doing it, it was like, well, I need you guys to send me a press kit because I need images, I need CDs, I need whatever. And now it's just like, well, here's our Facebook page and here's our Bandcamp where you can download our album.
Yeah.
That's great. Like, it's
Yeah,
totally different. And I totally appreciate that stuff is easier and essentially costs them nothing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But, if I've got to go shopping around to venues and being like, I want this band to play, and the venue says, well, what do they sound like? And I'm like, well, hold on, let me bring up their, let's see. Oh, no, they only have their bad songs on Spotify. Oh, they
Yeah.
don't have their new album on here yet. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And then that's the thing, right? Because that's what that helps with. Is it helps? It also helps you like push it to like What's Up or whatever. I don't even know if What's Up's still a thing, but yeah, you to have stuff to send to them so that when they print their thing in time for the show, they have all that
Absolutely.
stuff ready to go. Which is
Absolutely.
yeah, it's something I always tell people when I meet them at shows for like video games and stuff. It's like make a portfolio, make something that shows what you guys are working on. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing?
Yep.
To jump in on that,
Yeah.
in terms of whose responsibility, I think there's a third party that doesn't really ever get discussed, and
There's
I'm a
always a
very
third
big
option.
purveyor of this. I think it's also the responsibility of the music community at large locally. I mean, if people really want to
for
see,
sure.
an upgrade in better shows or better artists, or see their local scene thrive, at the end of the day, they have to go to the shows because, if you don't go to shows aren't going to come. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
At the end, it's as shitty as it is to say and as cynical as it is, like music at the end of the day, in large part when it comes to live shows specifically, because there's such an overhead cost for both parties, it's a business, and if there's not enough people coming, then there's not going to be shows that come. I mean, Splendid Sun Production is a perfect example of building relationships over a certain period of time, introducing new genres to the region that hadn't really come, not boxing ourselves into a specific set of genres, and being able to be successful. We would have indie pop shows that would, sell out. We would have hip hop shows that sell out. We would have, we had rockabilly shows that would sell out, heavy metal shows, and it's all about rockability.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, we
Rockabilly. I'm all about rockability, dude. That's fucking cool.
but it's all about like the it's, we're an organism. Music is an organism, and we all have to come together to make it happen.
Yeah, well, Hector actually
and-
brought that up last episode too. Is the idea of the idea of how like do free shows kind of ruin it for the shows where you actually do have to pay the $5 and the $10 or whatever, right? Like,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if that's still a thing, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, if people get to the point where they're just like, oh, well, there's this sort of okay band playing for free, and then there's this kind of band that's $10. I'm not going to spend $10.
Right.
I'm just going to drive way the hell out to Speaking Rock and watch another Sublime cover band.
Gross.
Honestly, I've been pushing for this, since I am a local musician, and you guys can probably appreciate this. I really want local bands to stop doing free shows because it's harming the local market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's two facets to that. Like, you charge $5 for a show, you're gonna get a little bit of money for you and the venue that you're performing at, and then on top of that, people have like a tangible reason to go. If they prepay $5 for a show, they're not gonna not show up. It's like the thing, like you invite a friend to a show. Oh yeah, I'll be there. Well, if they don't have any skin in the game, they're not gonna show up. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's something that I've talked to a lot of local musicians about. Of like, if everyone took like not a stand, I don't want to say it like that, but if everyone like just decided like, no, musicians in El Paso do deserve to get paid but we have to go about it in very specific business sense, you know, and everyone agreed to do certain things, you know, not play for less than, you know, 50 or $100 in a night or whatever, you know, try to build the scene. Obviously it would probably spectacularly fail a few times, but you know, people are, you know, humans are creatures of habit. So if people are used to going to free shows, they're going to want to go to free shows. But if people are used to having to pay a certain amount, they will be used to paying that certain amount. You know what I mean? At least that's what I believe. That might be naive, but I strongly do believe that. And if we tied a larger value to our arts community here in El Paso, I think it could thrive a lot more than it is right now.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
When it comes to like the festival shows, and I think I've brought this up with you before, Daniel, the idea of how, like, since you kind of do, or you have messed around with the whole Neon Desert stuff, like, how do you guys choose the bands that are going to show up? Like, is that like pre-planned a year before? Like, obviously when you get like the bigger bands and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you guys have like the little sideshow. Well, I guess sideshow too, but the little side stage stuff. Like, who does that? Like, what's the word? When you choose the bands, there's a word for like funneling all the bands through, and I can't think of the word right now.
Well, so really, with Neon Desert, at least
Just make it up, bro.
Recent,
I know, seriously.
Neon Desert has like a specific formula. You know what I mean? Like, there's hip hop artists, there's EDM artists, and then there's like either rock in general or like indie rock bands that play as well, or indie bands, I guess you could say in a large sense. Mm-hmm. The lineup is not built out a whole year before the festival, maybe 6 months before. And it really just gets complicated because there's so many logistics in play. A lot of these artists that are going to headline a festival have routing set up for 12 to 18 months before, you know, the festival may even happen. So it's all about who's available, who's coming through, how much do they want to charge, is it worth paying them that amount, and then going from there. But when it comes to like mid-level booking, you know, right, on the actual, when I say mid-level booking, I mean like, you know, it's always like the main artist at the top, and then like you got the middle artists, you know, like that'll, a lot of times that'll be in direct relation to, you know, Barry owns this booking agency and this top of the bill headliner is performing and he books for them, but he also books for this other band. It's like, all right, well, add them to the lineup too. A lot of times because you'll get like a
lot
discount,
of favors like that,
you know, and it's stuff like that. It's a huge political game, you know what I mean? And it's also
absolutely
about identifying what the market is into. So if you've noticed recently, we'll still have DJs, but 4 years ago we had a lot more DJs than we used to, and that's because the EDM culture in El Paso is starting to favor the hip hop culture. So now we would have more hip hop artists versus having more DJs, you know, and it's all about playing that kind of a game as well. Hip hop is like the new thing at this point. So
the new what?
You know, the new it thing in El Paso, at least at this point. I mean, I think it's nationwide, to tell you the truth, because hip hop is basically broken into the pop culture. So hip hop is the next, you know, is the thing right now, you know.
I thought it had been a thing for a while,
But like it really, over the past like 5 years, it's really become like the thing, you know.
Right
like,
on.
Bled into every other genre at this point, you know.
Yeah. Barry, I know you mentioned you had to take off in a couple minutes, so we can end it on you, man, in the sense of if you got any, like any kind of story in the sense of like what would be, so in the opposite sense of like what the question was earlier, right? Like what was your worst show? What do you think was your best show? Like which show has just been like, this is the reason why I do this kind of thing? Do you have something like that?
Well,
I mean, I'm sure there's a couple that you probably go through, but
yeah, I mean, there's different ways to, you know, sort of to look at that. Like, in the best in which one made me the most money because I got bills to pay.
Yeah,
you know, versus the one that, you know, the shows that just stick in my mind as being fun and being, you know, involving just the right people and having just an amazing show and a great time, whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, from the, you know, financial perspective, you know, we had like Brujeria. I don't know if you worked that show or not. And
I think that was
at the time
stickle joint.
Yeah. So that show that was the first time that I ever paid a band $10,000.
Wow. Holy
And
crap.
yeah, and it didn't happen a whole lot because I never really, it was just not my thing to want to do great big shows. So that kind of money was just like, what the hell? Like, how do I, And I remember at the end of the night, we're giving them cash because that's how it works.
Yeah.
And Mario says, hey, if you want, we can have security escort you guys out to the van to whatever. And the singer, just like, he looks at us and he's like, we're a bunch of big Mexican dudes with machetes. We're okay. Like,
Nice.
right on, man. All right.
Yeah. Nice. That's badass, man.
And so like that one, you mentioned Dance Disaster Movement,
Right.
That show with Jealous Sound, and that was one of those that was just, it was the stars aligned on that one, man.
Yeah.
It was just like, we got an awesome band that we love hanging out with and love playing with. They're playing. This other band's going to jump on. We don't know who they are. Turns out they were amazing.
Yeah.
They just blew everybody away. Nobody made a lot of money, but everybody had an amazing time.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing, from my perspective, like I said, I was never into doing the really big stuff. It just wasn't really what I wanted to do.
Right.
But doing smaller stuff is also, it's pure stress.
Yeah.
Because you don't make any money, and there are times when you have to put up a lot of money, in order to, pay deposits and prepay things like printing tickets, which isn't such a huge deal these days because everything can be done online. But, 15 years ago, if you wanted to do pre-sale tickets, you had to have physical tickets, and they weren't cheap. So, and so I enjoyed doing the smaller stuff a lot more. It was less stress. You get better chances. When you have big bands, you end up spending all night talking to their manager or, talking to the engineers that's touring with them, whatever. With the smaller bands, you hang out with the bands. You meet them, you hang out with them, you get to be friends with them. And so that was the kind of stuff that I really appreciated a lot more than the big stuff. But the big stuff was great. We did Rancid, and that one, I think just that one show, I think I paid my rent for like 4 months just off that one show. So
That's awesome, man.
Can't complain about that.
Yeah. Because that's what I was gonna say. Is the reason all these flyers are going on in the background is because Barry was like, that's the thing, is that's how you kind of take something to heart because you held on to all these flyers. Let alone that a ton of these were made by our buddy Tony, Red Letter Day Design. Right. And then you've got that like poster in the back, which I'm assuming is also a bunch of the flyers put together.
Yeah.
And then do you still have those sheets in front of you where you copied all the?
Yeah. So these aren't all my shows though, but these were just from like back in the day, a whole bunch of random stuff. So I took all my flyers and I copied them all onto this nice heavy cardstock, and
that's awesome,
fancy,
man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Color printing so that they'll last forever, and so that I can just always remember this stuff. I kept thinking I would like cut them all out and have a stack, but this is a lot more easy to
and
to
at the same
maintain.
time, they're probably all going to be different sizes and stuff, so you're going to have to mess around with that.
There's a bunch of different sizes. Oh, and it's funny because we mentioned earlier about how you'd pay practically nothing for a band one time and then they'd come back a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the example that I like to give, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this. So this is from Radiohead at Metropolis, and if you could see the price on that, it was $6.
Wow, man!
So
Metropolis,
Yeah.
Holy shit!
yeah,
Jesus,
Yeah.
that's insane, man.
yeah.
It's just that's fucking crazy, man. And then that's what I'm talking about is like to see something from like a Regal Beagle style stuff to like the stuff that Daniel does at like Neon Desert and like blocking off a whole city block
That's a whole
kind of
other
stuff,
level, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Barry, if you need to go, you can go ahead and disconnect if you want, unless there's something you want to finish off with. Daniel and I could stick around for just a little bit longer.
I'll just say that if anybody is people ask me all the time, like, well, what, if I have advice for anybody, I'm like,
Yeah.
just do it. If you love doing it, keep doing it. But and don't get discouraged, because it's tough. It
Yeah.
can be really tough.
Well, especially now, like I'm wondering how many of these places are going to stick around after this whole thing's over.
Yeah.
Because I thought they started opening up slowly, but I guess they closed them back down or something.
There's like
all the bars
coalition
closed
of,
again today.
venues.
Yeah.
There's a coalition of bars right now, of venues in Texas happening, but there's already been some closures announced through Austin and stuff like that. I don't know. I think it goes for saying, as Barry was saying, you just got to do it, but do understand that the lows are low, but the highs are really high too.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
peaks and valleys.
But it's so much more in the game of music. I always tell people, like, you have to be a special brand of crazy to want to do this industry, do anything in this industry, because you're gonna deal with some really fucking crazy people and some crazy shit. But when everything comes together and that crowd is fucking vibing with the show and the band's having a great time, like, there's no better experience.
Nothing beats
no
that,
better
man.
experience.
Oh yeah,
No.
yeah. I think it's always just that thing, man. Of like, you just if it's something you love doing, it's kind of like, you always you do a job, and like there's always something about the job that sucks. But when you don't like the job, it weighs on you more. But when it's something you love doing, you're able to deal with like who is that Glenn Bentons of the world, because it's like
No one should have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, I mean, because like the funny thing was, like when I was running sound at House of Rock and Roll, like, I liked that I was able to put music on during the band setups and exchanges or whatever, and I liked promoting local bands because I was like, dude, these guys are writing good music, and it's like no one's playing it anywhere, and why can't I just play some jams here? And then I remember there's this dude from a local band. I don't want to paint him in a bad light, but I was super surprised that he came up to me when the song played through the PA, and he's like, "What, dude? You think this is funny?" And I'm like, "What?" You are completely taking this the wrong way, dude. Like, this is a solid fucking jam, and I'm trying to promote your jam.
Yeah,
and it
like
blows
you're
my
teasing
mind.
him, like, "Oh, look who's over there."
Exactly,
at the bar.
exactly. It's like,
his
listen,
song.
yeah, like listen to
Talk
this
about
shit
ego.
song.
What the fuck?
Yeah, man. And I
Yeah.
was just like, what the hell? And it's little things like that'll eat away at you. But also, like I said, if you love doing something, it's cool. That, like I said, the being roped into run sound at the House of Rock and Roll wasn't something I was really looking forward to. So it's not something where I'm like, it's against my love of music or anything. It's just running sound, man. Like, I do not envy your position. But at the same time, though, Daniel, like,
man, I fucking love it.
Right. So that's what I was going to say, is the idea of, like, Barry, you did this for quite a while, but like, was it a full-time thing? Like, you did it and it was like, that was your thing, right? Like it would pay your bills and stuff like that. I mean, at times, I'm assuming. Or like, did you have like a side job that you also did at the same time?
No, I always had other jobs. I mean, like I said, I didn't do anything that was, super high dollar shows. So I never could have sustained myself off of that.
Right.
So I had other jobs.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is the idea of, for people who kind of want to start doing this, granted, when this whole thing's over, they'll probably start up again, I'm sure. But the idea of, like, you kind of have to sacrifice something to continue to do something you want to do on the side, right? So, like, you're going to have to work at McDonald's to do this type of stuff until you get to the point where it can be something you can do full time. Where, like, Daniel, I think you are doing it full time, right? Or you were at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it was your one thing.
We were working at the same job, the same day job. That's obviously how you and I met. One thing you may or may not know is that for probably 2 years of the time that I was there, the last 2 years that I was there, I was moonlighting. I was doing my day job, and then I would always go 4 or 5 nights a week, either run sound at Bowie Feathers, Monarch, or Lowbrow, wherever they needed a sound guy. And I wasn't making a ton of money, but eventually I figured out, like, the puzzle of being in the production world specifically, not necessarily the talent buying, because that's a little different, I guess you could say, in terms of how you can
Yep.
diversify, but
Right.
diversifying is the most important thing. I don't just work for Splendid Sun. I've also worked for companies out of Audio Excellence Productions, which is out of Albuquerque. I work for companies out of Santa Fe.
Yep.
I travel to Dallas for work, travel to Austin, and I do things for tons of places here. I'll be a stagehand for, a random show at the Don Haskins. It's like
Yeah.
you do everything. You're never gonna find like a single job unless you're like a, I don't know, audio engineer for Elton John, or like a guitar tech for Elton John or something like that. You're
Yeah.
never gonna have just that one job. You're always gonna have to continually find other sources of income.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
shit, man.
you made
Sacrifices.
you-
Go ahead, Bear.
Yeah, you made a really good point. You talk about, from the engineering perspective, it's a lot easier to take that skill, somewhere else and be like, oh, by the way, I know how to, wire sound, and I know how to, build these things and run this stuff. And as the promoter or the, talent buyer, I'm just like, I know how to read contracts and make people pay for shit. That's
Yeah, you
That's
kind of
not
have to
a
at that
great
point like
skill for me.
leverage your like relationships. It's not necessarily about
Yeah.
your skill; it's about who you know. But
Right.
I would say, from the perspective of like someone that's known a lot of talent buyers too, the hardest part of that job is like the only real way to be very successful is to run your own business. But there's so much to lose by jumping in. It's such a difficult decision that you have to make because if you're guaranteed a band $5,000, how many $5,000 losses can you take before you're fucking bankrupt? You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
versus me, like I can go start a business, buy a bunch of equipment. At the end of the day, if my business fails, I can sell that equipment and at least make some liquidity out of it. I have so much respect for talent buyers because I don't understand. I've booked a couple small little festivals here in El Paso myself, and I've done some stuff, but I would never ever even imagine jumping into that world because you gotta have some balls to be in that business, man.
Right. Jeez, man.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, was there anything you wanted to end on? I know we didn't talk much about the Swell Kids and the other stuff you were working on.
No, the only thing that I want to say, and I had a lot of fun just discussing it, but moving forward, I think we as a greater community, especially in these times, need to figure out how we can make online work better for us, especially if we're not going to be able to
100%.
have shows for months. And that's actually why we reconnected, JC, because
Yeah.
I'm working on a live, show coming
Mhm.
up here soon, with some artist or whatever, and it's about making it work and how we can all get back to work, at least in a small way at this point.
Yeah, like digitally, because there's so much you can do like online nowadays.
Yeah.
That it blows your mind, and when you like the people who just don't take advantage of all this, the ability
This
to
is the
do
hard
this at
part.
this time, especially.
This is the hard part, and I explained this to a couple of friends of mine when they asked me about the live show. Like, when you're at a live show, if it sounds 75% good, like if the audio is 75% good, it's great. If the lighting is 70 or 60% decent, then it's great. When you're doing a live show and you don't have the energy and that element of people, the production has to be perfect, because if the production is not
Yeah.
perfect, I don't
Yeah.
give a fuck if you're Garth Brooks or Drake. Like, if your production isn't great and your stream isn't solid,
Yeah.
I don't want to fucking watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the hard hurdle that we got to get past, because technology is to a point where it should be able to allow us to do that. But I don't know. I mean, this is a whole nother conversation, but like broadband isn't where it needs to be. Access
Yeah.
to solid internet is really good enough. So it's like we should be able to have this whole secondary market going on
Yeah.
right now, but it's not
Well,
coming together
Yeah,
as
because
well as it.
a long time ago, when I started the whole podcast thing and was going to do blogs and stuff, I remember trying to get Barry. Barry would try to do like a lot of kind of remote type stuff, but that's the thing, is you're just super
Yeah.
reliant on the internet of the place that you're at. When it comes to like us doing this kind of thing remotely at a venue while the bands are going to play or whatever, like if it's a set thing, this is something I was talking with you about, Daniel, was the idea that if the venue is a set thing, they should have their own kind of like setup for that kind of stuff, right? Like have their own software, like the software we're using now or whatever, like have their own production stuff going and the internet to back that up. I think you could really do that. It was something I wanted to pitch to Mario a long time ago at House of Rock and Roll, but at that time, like, it took more stuff. Like stuff wasn't readily like available, I guess, in the sense of like not spending too much money to do that. And it was super early. What's that?
That was 15 years ago.
Exactly. that dude, just crazy.
So, you guys, I mean,
yeah.
People watching may or may not realize this, but I mentioned the outdoor lowbrow a whole bunch of times. Like lowbrow has been in the process of putting together a new venue for a very long time now, and we were getting ever so closer. And I'm positive that once all this, ends, lowbrow is still going to end up moving. And of course, as the head production manager, I was the one building the lighting rig, the video rig, the audio rig, and I was going to pre-wire the whole place with 6 separate camera angles and a dedicated video switcher, and have all that ready. It's a very expensive proposition, and honestly, there's like not enough money that comes in. Like, yeah, Twitch is great, YouTube is great, all that stuff, but there's really no solid way. And I remember reading an article, YouTube offering a service where you have to pay to be able to watch the stream, but people are going to be able to hack past that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's where it gets.
Or would they even pay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you have the idea of like a live show, like you're experiencing something, and although the internet is amazing, like you can't recreate the experience. And I think that's a big problem that's happening right now specifically, is people are trying to recreate the experience that you would have of going to a show. I think you have to be more unique. At this point, specifically bands that are like in the mid-range tier, you have to now become a multimedia performer. Like you have to be ready to not only play live shows, but then get people to know who you are and stuff like that. Like, produce, like the artists that I'm working with, the Swell Kids, we're working on so many crazy concepts in terms of like how we can get people involved. We already did one live stream, which is on YouTube at this point. We did like a recording of it, but we live streamed it to Instagram, which anyone out there, don't fuck with live streaming on Instagram. It's awful.
Yeah, no, it's real bad. That was the one tip I had for you, man, was like, whatever you do, don't do it on Instagram.
I was like, yeah, bro, I already did it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, I think I think artists have like a great opportunity to be able to build something super cool and something innovative,
Yep.
But it's just a matter of making it happen at this point.
Yeah. Holy crap, man.
But I can't wait till live shows come back, man. If there's anything taken from this interview, it's how deprived I am seeing live shows. I say with one breath earlier in the interview that I can't stand at a show and watch more than 3 or 4 songs, but I would kill to go see a live show right now. Yeah.
And then after the first song, you'd want to go home. What was that, Bear?
I was saying I haven't been in a long time, but I could sure go for one right about now.
So that's what we'll actually end on. How long do you think it'll take before the first show we could all go to? You have a vibe of when that is? From now, right now, yeah.
6 months.
6 months, really? So
Summer
is that
of
into next year? Yeah. So January?
Summer of
sometime?
2021.
Maybe Christmas time if we're lucky.
Really?
No.
I'm feeling like November.
Summer of 2021 is when it happens.
I think he might be right.
Really?
Unfortunately. I'm trying to be optimistic, but I feel like maybe late
I
spring, early summer touring season is.
I want to be honest, like I've been in this production game for so many years, but I'm in the process of applying for other gigs because it's not going to come back. It's not going to come back, and even when it comes back, I don't know. On one hand, I'm super excited to see what comes back, because if you think about it, a lot of these corporations are not going to be ready to jump in, It's going to be like indie promoters and whoever's left on that front.
Okay.
Like, I think this industry is going to like DIY itself all over again for another, couple years, and it's going to be fucking rad, bro.
Yeah, well, because that's what I was going to say, is it would take, like, the indie kind of bands that would just start. So, like, the thing you're talking about where, like, making a show that would be so obviously you're not going to have like the crowd and stuff like that, right? But they're these old like radio type shows where like At the Drive-In played, and it was just kind of like the band. Obviously there was no crowd, but it was like the band, and it was like streamed online, and it sounded fan fucking tastic, and it was just like the band playing live. So like it's not the idea of like I think you posted these, Barry, the Goldfinger videos where like, you know, each member was in a separate place, but they still all made it live. Like, I think that would definitely take away from like just doing it. It's cool, it's neat, you know, it sounds good, whatever. But you got to have the whole band in one fucking thing, right? And like just have the different camera angles or whatever. But like it's gonna take someone trying to risk that type of thing to at least continue it until I guess the next time we could have a big show like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, that's definitely possible. But then the real question from then is like, and you should know, you know this, JC, to put something high quality together like that is not a cheap proposition. You know? It's not as much as it is to have to like rent a stage and a bunch of PA and whatever, but you're still paying like a good penny for all that. And it's like, how do you return that investment? You know? If they really do that, you know, online, you know?
Yeah. Well, when it comes down to making the audio, I mean, making the stream be stable, like some of that's completely out of your control, but you can do as much as you can to, you know.
At the beginning of all of this, at the end of March, I did a test with a land from the stream my phone via USB hub, plugged into my phone, high quality audio, decent quality video, and it was fantastic. But you know, at that point, you're having to risk, you know, pulling a bunch of people together, and it's like, what's right and what's wrong. At that point, it becomes a moral issue, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, is it okay to ask a band of 5 people to come together just to perform a show that maybe haven't hung out for the past 30 days, you know? It gets real
just
sticky.
do it with all masks on, and then have the singer have the mask that has the hole in it for the spoon.
But no,
that would work.
The high quality thing. I've reached out to multiple artists locally and said, "Hey, let's do something," but nothing like real solid has come from it. But I think like if someone could do that, it would be awesome. I know that KTSM has been doing like pre-recorded shows, like what Double Scope used to do with Under the Frequency.
Yeah,
like that's kind of spread around. I know Star City Studios was doing something like that for a while too. But that was all pre-COVID, you know. Like those are pre-recorded, edited, and then put out on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then that begs the question, does it have to be live? Can you do a pre-record and then broadcast it as if it were live? Or is that fucked up to the audience?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I was wondering where you were going with that.
Pre-record it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Barry. Yeah.
If you don't have to handle the encoding of the audio and the video on the actual streaming station, and you're literally just streaming a video file through Restream or OneStream, but you're performing as it is a live show, like, is that taking away from it? You know, because now you're boosting.
But now you're cutting. You're going to be editing video, and you're going to be taking out that kind of like interaction. Not that you're going to be interacting, I guess, but yeah.
My idea is that you wouldn't edit it out. Like my idea is like, let's say you get 3 or 4. It could be like 3 or 4 camera angles, put it to a video switcher, and then you record whatever that output is to get the raw performance.
Right.
You know, maybe throw some overlays on top of here and there, but I wouldn't chop up the performance. It would be all one contiguous file, like a 1 hour. Like if you wanted to do like a 45-minute set, you would just throw it together, have someone run a switcher. So now you're bringing the production costs way down because you don't have to worry about this internet situation. You know what I mean? Because now you don't have to upgrade your internet to get faster speeds or find a place that has super solid internet, like a commercial space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, I could take like this Canon M50 and go output HDMI to an A10 Mini. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Angle, you know, at know less than $500.
yeah, definitely,
so
man.
My band Table Manners, like we've been talking about doing that for a while, and hopefully we can do it soon. Maybe it comes out good, maybe it doesn't. But I think in this day and age, there's no way to do the live and the high quality at the same time. You have to choose: is it truly live, or is it maybe shaky quality because of the internet situation? It's like, which option do you want to go with? And I think the better option is to pre-record and then broadcast as if it was live. And while it's broadcasting, then you can have the performers involved in the chat at that point, you know?
That's
All right,
I
yeah.
was just going to
Okay.
say that. Have the band hang out in the chat and interact with the fans while they're watching.
Yeah,
And I
that's
don't
true.
think it's
That's true.
I really don't. Because at the end of the day, the band's still playing to a fucking camera. It doesn't matter if they played 2 days ago to the camera or if they're playing to the camera right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I've been toying around a little bit with that to try and see if, because as a one man band, you can kind of get away a little more with doing that, you know. But yeah, it's I didn't think about the pre-recorded thing. I just thought it'd be better to do the live thing, but
You have
might be something.
If you have like a pro plan, they already offer
Yeah.
that service.
No, yeah, 100%.
You know?
And it's part of YouTube and everything too. So
I think if I do it, I'll probably go with one stream because Restream has like a 4-hour limit, whereas one stream has an 8-hour. And I'm saying like those large limits because if I do this, I'm not gonna do it with one artist. I'm gonna do like a large event. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that'd be cool because I think that it also opens it up to have a ton more people come in because then it's like you can have that array, right? Of like, okay, this is like kind of like the Coachella thing where it's like you've got your hour of like hip hop, you've got your hour of like Radiohead, you've got your hour of like, yeah, Radiohead's a category, by the way.
I think the way to move in, the way to move into the whole financial thing, and I don't mean to like, I don't know, I don't want to sound like like an asshole or anything, but I think a way to kind of try to, because at this point we're at a stage where we have to prove the concept. We didn't have the ability to build this prior to coronavirus happening, so we have to kind of like try to figure out how to prove concept. So,
Chugging up
Hi,
my
Jason.
water. Yeah, sorry.
I think a good way of going about it is like a lot of these larger places and more established names. Like a stream that I recently watched was the Preservation Jazz Hall stream, which is a venue in New Orleans that does a lot of jazz, and they've worked with a lot of big artists. But they did like a large stream, and they took the donations to pay to their musicians that aren't performing. So I think what may be worthwhile is, to focus on donation-based streams, if not only because people are in need as of now, but to get people used to the fact that, hey, I'm watching a live stream, I should give some money to this live stream.
Yeah, there you go.
And
Like
then,
a tip. Yeah.
Six months from now, that can change from like, hey, donate to us and we're going to give this money to someone else. It's like, all right, can you give us some money? Because now we're broke as fuck. You know what I mean? And I think it's all about training people. Like I said earlier, even with like the local shows, if we all banded together and said we're not going to play for any shows that are free to the audience, everyone needs to pay $3, over a certain period of time, people get used to it.
That's going to be tough, man.
I don't know.
That'll be tough to control.
You got to figure out a way to try to make it work,
Yeah. Barry,
Yep,
you think
someone
you're
will
ever
figure it out.
Yeah.
Insane,
You think you're ever going to get back into booking shows and stuff? Nah.
I think he should jump in
My
2021
days.
for sure.
I know, right?
Bro, it's going to be like
That
the
cash
Wild
flow.
West again. Think about it, man. It's going to be crazy. Because you think about it, like, you're going to have arena shows that are going to possibly, like, let's assume that we get a vaccine like 18 months from now or whatever. Arena shows will resume. Theater shows might resume, but there are going to be some theaters that close. But those mid-range venue areas, there's going to be so many of those that are going to end up closing that there's not going to be enough mid-range venues for mid-range bands to play. So now those mid-range bands are going to have to play those small venues. So it's going to kick everyone down. So now when everything comes back, everyone's going to be trying to play shows. There's not going to be enough places to play. So you're going to see crazy like block parties pop up, and you're going to see crazy productions, maybe even something in a parking lot at some point. It's going to be really wild when it all like comes back for the first 6 months, because everyone's just going to be clamoring at everything to get as much money as they can.
Well, if I remember
matter what
correctly, that's what I think Hector was talking about in the last episode, was the idea of house shows coming back and stuff.
House shows will definitely come
I don't
back
know.
in a big way for sure, because like I said, those mid-range artists are going to have to hop into those like small clubs, and then those small clubs, the bands that would be playing in there are going to be playing the DIY spots. Now all those bands that would start in DIY spots are going to have to find a way, and if there are enough of them, they will start another network of house shows. That will come back. I don't think it'll last for a very long time, but I think there's just going to be a weird chain reaction of everything. Even going to, if you think about comedy clubs, the same thing. Like everyone's going to kind of get knocked down a tier because there's not enough places for people to play. You know, it's sad, but a lot of venues are going to close because of this. You know.
Yep.
And it's going to take a long time for that business to come back to what it was before.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to end on a negative note like that. That sounds all sad, dude. Sounds all sad.
No,
Everything
it's
has
good.
to reach
Good.
another. Let's be honest. Like the music industry, especially the live industry. I mean, and I know this from being in it recently. You know,
But
it's become so corporatized. I think this is going to pull some of the corporate out of it. If nothing, at least for a little, small amount of time.
That's punk rock, bro. That's
Yeah,
the way
I was-
it goes. It gets too big, something
we're
happens,
gonna-
brings it all back down.
Exactly.
hell yeah, man. I was gonna say, I think it's the idea of like, I mean, even just thinking about like live streaming stuff, and it's like people will find a way to innovate, man. And I think this is just gonna be, I don't know, some kind of evolution of whatever was
I don't know
happening.
if you've heard of this guy named Mark Rebele. He's kind of gone viral on Facebook. He just does basically, he doesn't record his songs. They're like all on the fly, and he does loop station stuff. And he's fucking crazy. He's hilarious. If you have not checked him out, check him out. Mark Rebele. His last name is Rebillet, and he's like one of the first artists that I know who's gone on tour during coronavirus. And he put money out of his pocket to build a drive-in tour, and it's him, and it's just him on stage, and he just does loop station stuff, and it's silly, but it's fantastic what he's doing. And he's a really great example of what can be done, and a business that can be built from that. He's
Right.
from Dallas. How I learned
And
about
he
him
is
years ago.
hilarious.
You've seen him, Barry?
He's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have some promoter friends in Dallas, and I learned about him a couple of years ago through them, and I started watching him. But in COVID-19, he's blossomed like crazy. So many
That's
people
awesome.
watch him now.
Yeah. Well, I know Kel randomly just gets on Twitch just to see what's going on, and she saw T-Pain was doing some shit. I think it was T-Pain. I don't know. Maybe I'm being racist.
Also,
but
if anyone's into
there was
if anyone's into hip hop,
they're
like
busting out.
Timbaland,
Yeah.
Timbaland has started like this new thing called Versus, where he's having like really big hip hop artists like
yeah.
rap battle through Instagram. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, like that's what I'm saying, man. Like you gotta, you do something. You'll figure something out.
The human spirit is strong.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Stay positive, motherfuckers.
That's a good ending
That's
right
it.
There you go. All right, stay positive, motherfuckers. Yeah, dude. So thank you guys so much for doing this, man. Like this is that thing. It always, like we were talking about, Barry. We plan for an hour and it goes forever. Just because it,
I've
yeah.
been cooped up. I've been cooped up for 4 months, so I appreciate anyone to talk to. Like I'm a loner now.
Yeah, so I mean that is one of the reasons I had told Barry about this before. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this again, just because it's like some people just need to talk and like talk to other people and like connect and stuff, and it's a good way to do it. Like I said, it's 2020, man. You got internet, like it's not that hard, Like my favorite thing is to get people in and like play some jams and like it's just like you're saying, it's a little difficult. I was gonna try and do us as like a show thing, but it all depends on their end and setting up their stream to do live performances to me, and then we could stream it that way, right? When it's like Jared last episode, he just had an acoustic, he just played on stream, and that was easy because it's just one person. But you kind of don't want to you don't want to like kneecap the band by having them try to figure out a different way to do it,
Yep.
You want to give it as much yeah.
But
you wanna,
every band should have
perform.
like that like business card in the back of their pocket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if any band here wanted me to do that, like I can set up a high quality audio stream and we
Yeah.
can just stream from a fucking iPhone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Shit,
I
man,
think-
maybe we should think about that because that's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'd love to do.
Well, see, and the
team up
sad
on
thing is, like in this, I have this from like a musician's perspective from when I was younger. The whole idea of like production and technical stuff
yeah.
is just so mind blowing that you can't fathom. But then you
Yeah.
approach someone who's been doing it for years. You're like, yeah, bro, that's easy. Like I got you. Like
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
8 inputs, got you, man. Whatever.
Yeah,
Like, you
or
know?
like Barry's over here like, do we got the cables for this shit, bro? Holy shit, man. Yeah.
But I appreciate you
remember
having
that.
me on, JP. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah,
It
dude.
was a pleasure. Having you
100%.
again, Barry. It's been a long time.
100%,
Super
man.
fun.
Yeah, hopefully this will get back to normal soon, man. We could start doing some shows together and all that kind of stuff. meeting it in
Yeah.
person is always the best. But Barry, thank you so much for sticking around, man. I know we had you like 30 minutes ago to leave, but it's awesome, dude. I appreciate you sticking around, dude. Have a great night. Everybody have a great night. People in the chat, I know you're still there, so thanks for sticking around, asking some questions, and hopefully the next episode isn't too far off. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and fade to black. New Kids on the Block. Yeah.
What? Right.
Exactly. That's how I roll, man.
Shouldn't have gone there, man.
What was the message again? It was stay cool, stay positive, motherfuckers. So
Stay positive, motherfucker.
yeah, stay
There you
positive,
go. Stay
motherfuckers.
positive.
And that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So we will see you later. Thanks for sticking around, and peace out.